After transmigrating into a book, she became best friends with the female lead. But the female lead ended up having an affair with her fiancé. She even had the audacity to suggest they could still remain best friends. In a fit of anger, the girl wrote a letter to the crown prince. Since your bride-to-be and my fiancé are having an affair, why don't we engage in a mutual infidelity? To her surprise, the crown prince actually agreed. The original Sierra was just an ordinary supporting character in the book. Her fiancé was always fooling around, causing trouble. He even secretly tortured and abused the female lead. As a result, he was sentenced to death by the crown prince, the male lead. Sierra, as the villain's fiancée, was also executed along with him. To change the original plot, Sierra had rescued the female lead from her suffering in the slums early on. She even helped her, who was always lonely in the original story, successfully integrate into high society. Just when Sierra thought everything would be fine if she broke off the engagement with her trashy fiancé, one day, the female lead Tiliel approached her. Cautiously, Tiliel hinted to Sierra that she had fallen for someone. Hearing this, Sierra looked up in shock. She hadn't expected the female lead to follow the original plot so soon. But seeing how guilty Tiliel looked, she still congratulated her. Even though following the original plot meant her own tragic life was about to begin. At first, Sierra thought the person Tiliel liked was the crown prince, because in the novel, Tiliel was the epitome of purity. Only she could use the power of purification to save the crown prince. So Sierra asked if it was His Highness the Crown Prince. But Tiliel just looked confused. Sierra had a bad feeling. According to the original story, the crown prince was supposed to be her first love. So she started throwing out name after name to confirm. From 5-year-old kids to 80-year-old men, but she still couldn't get a positive response from Tiliel. Tiliel hinted that it was someone Sierra didn't get along with. There were many people Sierra didn't get along with. She told Tiliel to just say it directly. Finally, Tiliel told Sierra it was young Master Ashite. Hearing this, Sierra was dumbfounded. Wasn't that the name of her fiancé? Sierra, I'm sorry. Young Master Ashite said he likes me too. So I was wondering if you two could break up. It would be good for both of us. This explosive statement shattered Sierra's worldview. How could the best friend she had worked so hard to save fall for that trash? Just then, Ashite pushed open the door and entered. As soon as Tiliel saw him, she ran into his arms with a pitiful look on her face. Then the scumbag started berating his fiancée. The girl couldn't believe it. Having an affair and still being so righteous. You're one of a kind. Then Ashite, while holding Tiliel, announced the termination of his engagement with Sierra. Before leaving, Tiliel turned her head and asked, even though this happened, we're still best friends, right? It was only at this moment that Sierra realized how green Tiliel really was. She clenched her fists in anger. As night fell, Sierra found herself unable to sleep. The day's events had left her mind in turmoil, especially when she thought about how the female lead could say such shameless things after having an affair with her fiancé. She had only wanted to maintain a good relationship with the female lead to avoid being sentenced to death. But why was she always surrounded by people who liked to cheat? She realized that in her previous life, she had experienced something similar. Her boyfriend would blatantly seek out other women for pleasure every day. Since then, she had always despised such people. Suddenly, a cool breeze blew by. Thinking about those cheaters sleeping soundly without a care in the world, Sierra realized that brooding wouldn't help, so she turned and went back to her room. She noticed a letter on the table. It was from Sierra, who had been trying to set up the female lead with the crown prince, constantly playing matchmaker for the two. But now such a dramatic turn of events had occurred. Finally, Sierra decided to tell the truth. She would inform him that Tiliel already had a lover, and their previous plans could no longer continue. Just as Sierra sent the letter using magic, she immediately received a reply. The royal family was already discussing their marriage. The thought of the female lead being with Ashite, while also engaged to the crown prince, made Sierra feel the situation was incredibly complicated. To make matters worse, both issues were related to her. Sierra grew increasingly angry. She hurriedly wrote back to him. She no longer wanted to be a fool who only knew how to endure. She decided to take a risk. Since your highness's bride-to-be and my fiancé have that kind of relationship, why don't we engage in mutual infidelity? At this point, Sierra was blinded by anger. She thought, fine, if you can mess around, so can I. However, in the days that followed, Sierra regretted her actions. She never received a reply from the crown prince. Originally, she thought she would be arrested for insulting the royal family. But to her surprise, the crown prince had simply ignored her letter. Sierra mused, as expected of the female lead's halo. Even if she cheats with another man, the crown prince is willing to cover for her with love. I can only wish the three of you happiness. At this moment, her maid brought breakfast with a worried expression. The young lady hadn't eaten much in the past few days. Sierra picked up a sandwich. Eat and drink to survive. Look on the bright side. At least I'm free from that scumbag now. May suddenly burst into tears. My lady is so upset she can't even eat, while those two scoundrels don't care at all. We can't let them off so easily. I must find a way to ruin them both. Sierra comforted May, saying she was fine. No, you're not fine. May handed something to Sierra. This is evidence from the Hill Love Manipulation Group. It's an underground guild that specializes in handling cheating and affair cases. They have a 100% five-star rating in the industry. Then, May angrily led Sierra to find the guild. As they approached the guild, May cautiously warned Sierra that the guild leader was an extremely dangerous person. If anyone displeased him, he would turn them into dolls. Moreover, those who engaged in affairs would be captured and severely tortured. Although there might be some exaggeration in these claims, the young lady must be extremely careful. However, the next moment, a man appeared before them. He confirmed that most of what they had just heard was true, and that he was indeed the guild leader. The green-haired man then informed them that only clients were allowed to enter and exit the guild. This principle must be followed regardless of one's status. May hesitated, not wanting to let her young lady enter such a place alone. But Sierra insisted on going. Left with no choice, May could only plead with the green-haired man to take good care of her lady. She grasped his hand, warning him that her lady was very fragile inside. If he suggested letting those two scoundrels off the hook, he must not agree. After Sierra entered the guild, everyone seemed a bit flustered. Even the leader carefully inquired how to deal with her fiancé and that woman. Sierra simply removed her cloak, took out her folding fan, and showed no trace of her previous timidity or weakness. Before that, I need to hear your explanation. Who couldn't keep their mouths shut, making this guild known to everyone? The moment Sierra returned to the guild, Raid tremblingly fell to his knees. Not only had he expanded the business without permission, making the guild widely known, but he had also failed to find evidence of her fiancé's infidelity for so long. To make amends, Raid volunteered to infiltrate the Dark Guild for investigation. But now that Sierra had broken off her engagement, there was no need to take such a risk. So, Sierra told Raid to continue searching for evidence as usual. At this moment, Raid reported to Sierra that a strange client had submitted a request to the guild a few days ago. The person knew that Raid wasn't the real leader. Apparently, someone had proposed mutual infidelity to him, so he wanted to seek advice. So Sierra prepared herself to meet the client. Although she doubted the crown prince would come to such a place, she wore a voice changer just to be safe. Sierra pushed open the door. The scent of roses wafted to her nose. Could it be the client's perfume? Are you the leader of this guild? The man's confident and arrogant attitude made Sierra speculate about his identity. With such outstanding looks, she, who had long been part of high society, had no reason not to recognize him. Moreover, the original story hadn't mentioned any character with crimson eyes. After Sierra sat down, the man ordered her to remove her mask. Hearing this, Sierra immediately prepared to leave. The man hurriedly apologized. I just wanted to confirm your identity. I meant no offense. At this moment, Sierra noticed that the scent of perfume had disappeared. She promised the man that she would keep his secret, so the man began to explain his request. A friend of mine received a letter from a lady. She said her fiancé and my friend's intended bride were having an affair. So she proposed that my friend engage in mutual infidelity. The more Sierra listened, the more shocked she became. Isn't this my story? Could the man sitting across from her be the crown prince in disguise? Just as Sierra was feeling disheartened, thinking her life was over, the man added that his friend didn't actually have an intended bride. He himself had received many marriage proposals, but this suggestion of mutual infidelity was a first. So I'm curious about what mindset led to such a proposal. I heard you're an expert on affairs, so I came to consult you. Hearing this, Sierra breathed a sigh of relief. She had confirmed several times back then, and he had always told her the royal family was discussing marriage with the female lead. Sierra looked at the man before her, feeling he had come with the answer, looking for a question. So this was how Raid had been making money so easily these days. Realizing this, she smiled and congratulated him. That lady must really like you to say such things. The man agreed with this answer. He told Sierra he would accept the proposal. This made Sierra feel a bit envious. He didn't even have a fiancé, yet he was so sincerely troubled about how to respond. So Sierra inquired about the lady's identity. She stated that their guild would help investigate the lady's scumbag fiancé. But the man seemed dismissive, only warning Sierra that if the lady came here with a request, it would be best to reject her outright. The next moment, the man cast a spell on Sierra. Forget everything I've said today. Suddenly, Sierra found herself standing still, unable to move. And there was a strange man trying to remove the mask from her face. In her panic, Sierra broke free from the spell. This surprised even the man. Sierra, with her memory erased, naively asked who he was. Little did she know, her uniqueness had piqued the man's interest. For the next few days, Sierra stayed at the guild, as her head would often ache inexplicably. At home, May kept asking if she had dealt with the cheating couple. Raid suggested Sierra should just be honest, but Sierra felt May wouldn't believe her. In May's eyes, she was just a frail, sickly lady who needed care. The outside world even spread rumors that she would cry with guilt if she accidentally stepped on a flower. Ray was about to say the guild leader actually liked making doll curses, but Sierra threw a pillow at him. Indignant, he questioned the leader about the doll in her hand. If not for cursing, who would make such a doll? And when making it, she had specifically requested lips that could arouse desire, a sharp jawline, and small, delicate ears. There was only one person in the entire empire with golden hair and golden eyes like that. Sierra was left speechless. She clutched the doll tightly in her arms. Indeed, it was modeled after the Crown Prince from the novel, but she hadn't placed any curse on it. She just loved the Crown Prince character so much that she made the doll. Then Sierra put the doll back on the shelf. She told Raid to get back to work, saying she had some personal business to attend to. Afterwards, Sierra purchased a series of maps, compasses, and immigration handbooks. She decided to temporarily flee the Empire, because right now, she couldn't get involved in the love triangle between the male and female leads and her villainous fiancé. Upon returning home, Sierra began packing her luggage. Suddenly, her servant informed her of a visitor. The visitor insisted on meeting her in person. Since the visitor's identity wasn't disclosed, Sierra instinctively thought that during her shopping trip, Raid might have encountered a problem he couldn't handle. So she ordered to let the visitor in. To her surprise, the visitor turned out to be her dream lover. Upon seeing the Crown Prince she had been yearning for, Sierra closed her eyes. She instinctively thought he had come to settle scores with her. Only when her servant reminded her did she come to her senses. Belatedly, she instructed to lead the guest to the reception room. Just as Sierra was about to escort the Crown Prince, he took the initiative to present her with a bouquet of vibrant roses. After accepting the flowers, Sierra politely thanked him. But the Crown Prince noticed the travel gear in May's hands. Then the two arrived at the reception room. The Crown Prince suddenly asked, "Miss Ravelines, why did you invite me to the reception room without even confirming my identity? What if I were a dangerous person?" Sierra was startled. She remembered that the Crown Prince's appearance had always been a secret in the Empire, because an evil dragon once appeared in the Empire. Although the first emperor successfully defeated it, he was also cursed, and this generation's Crown Prince was the most severely affected by the curse among the royal family. At his coming-of-age ceremony, he would completely transform into an ugly, ill-tempered monster. So Sierra began to act. "You prepared such beautiful flowers for me. I thought you couldn't be a bad person." The Crown Prince then frankly stated his reason for coming. "You wrote to me asking if we should be together. I've come to accept your proposal." Sierra pretended to have just learned his identity, feigning alarm as she greeted the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince played along, explaining that even most people in the palace didn't know his appearance. He admitted his sudden visit might seem a bit forceful, but as a social expert like Sierra, how could she let the Crown Prince admit fault? She lavishly praised the Crown Prince and the flowers he brought. This made the usually homebound Crown Prince's ears turn red. He shakily picked up the teacup, gulping it down in one go. Attempting to change the subject, he asked Sierra what kind of tea it was. Sierra picked up the teacup and brought it close to smell. She discovered it was just plain water. But being the social expert she was, she deceived him, saying it it was imported tea from China, colorless and odorless, with a taste only those in love could discern, since they would be spending a lot of time together in the coming days. The Crown Prince and Sierra introduced themselves to each other, but just as Sierra finished saying, "Please take care of me," a brazen hand reached out towards her. The Crown Prince lifted a lock of Sierra's hair, asking, "So, are we lovers from now on?" Sierra's heart fluttered at his flirtatious gesture, but then she saw the Crown Prince shyly stop his actions. The girl inwardly chided. How could he become shy at such a crucial moment? One moment flirty, the next shy. What was this about? Afterwards, Sierra and the Crown Prince agreed on the terms of their relationship. The contract could be terminated once she broke off her engagement with her fiancé. Sierra knew well that only the female lead could purify the Crown Prince's curse. However, the Crown Prince stood up silently. With his back to Sierra, he asked, "If I don't have a fiancé, would this contract still be valid?" Sierra responded with confusion. "If you don't have a fiancé, there's no need for a contract, right?" Little did she know, a hint of disappointment flashed in the Crown Prince's eyes. He agreed. "Until then, we'll maintain our relationship as lovers." Seeing the Crown Prince's agreement, Sierra stood up. She gently placed her hand on the Crown Prince's, symbolizing the sealing of their contract. But in the next moment, the Crown Prince said he wanted to confirm the boundaries between lovers. As he spoke, he interlaced his fingers with Sierra's. He pulled her intimately into his embrace. "Is this acceptable?" Sierra didn't refuse. The Crown Prince then leaned towards Sierra's delicate lips, intending to take the next step. At this critical moment, Sierra shyly turned her head away. The Crown Prince, testing the waters, understood that for now, everything except kissing was allowed with Sierra. He then prepared to leave, intending to savor the moment. But Sierra called out to him. She invited him to appear as her lover in front of the cheating couple. In a cafe somewhere in the Empire, a lady revealed that Duval from the Ashite family had found a new partner. The other female companions were unsurprised, just as she was about to reveal who the new partner was. Duval entered the shop with the female lead. The gossiping trio was immediately stunned. Seeing the intimate behavior of the cheating couple, they all felt indignant on Sierra's behalf. It was thanks to Sierra that the female lead had come this far. The group then decided to help keep this a secret from Sierra. However, not even 2 seconds later, their jaws dropped again. They saw Sierra walk in with a handsome man with golden hair and golden eyes. Their greeting style was identical to that of the cheating couple from earlier. The two deliberately acted surprised in front of the cheating pair. The Crown Prince and the fiancé stared coldly at each other. Then, as if possessed, the fiancé released his arm from around the female lead. Impatiently, he told her to take a taxi home later. Sierra thought to herself, "How dare you get angry? Can't handle a little taste of your own medicine." After completing his task, the Crown Prince bid farewell to Sierra. The female lead then called out to Sierra, hoping to have a chat. She then boldly strode towards Sierra. At this critical moment, one of the female companions from earlier came to Sierra's side. She forcefully pulled Sierra to sit with them. Afterwards, that female companion kept criticizing the female lead for being ungrateful. However, the other two were more interested in the handsome man. Sierra lied, saying she met him at the temple. He would follow her wherever she went. Perhaps this was why Duval found it annoying. Sierra's purpose in doing this was to provoke her fiancé's anger, hoping he would send a letter to dissolve their engagement. That evening, Sierra returned home, but she hadn't received any letters from Duval, so she decided to add more fuel to the fire. She took out a letter, inviting the Crown Prince to accompany her shopping for clothes tomorrow. Early in the morning, Sierra finished dressing up, ready to meet the Crown Prince. May hurriedly reported to Sierra that the social circles were buzzing with gossip about the young lady's love quadrangle. Seeing her mistress remain silent, May became even more anxious, wondering if the man might be some strange person. Sierra smiled and told May, "Indeed, he is a strange person, but he's my lover now, oh." This bold admission left May at a loss for words, but she quickly grabbed Sierra's hand to encourage her. "It's all Duval's fault for being unfaithful. I fully support you finding another man, miss. But why not find a more excellent man? Only a handsome, rich, and powerful man is worthy of you, miss. Someone like the Crown Prince, for example." To her surprise, as soon as Sierra descended the stairs, she saw the Crown Prince leaning against the wall. Her mind went blank on the spot. Seeing the Crown Prince's knowing smile, Sierra blushed. He couldn't have heard everything just now, could he? However, May's voice still came from behind. Miss, give up on that mysterious man from yesterday. Those types who think they can win our Miss's heart with just flowers are clearly good for nothing. It wasn't until she saw that man appear before her that May covered her mouth in despair. Sierra was too embarrassed to look, but the Crown Prince didn't seem to mind. Miss Ravelins, this good-for-nothing has arrived. After getting into the carriage, the Crown Prince teased, that maid really cares about you. I'm also honored to be the only one worthy of you. Then he asked Sierra what she thought about it. Sierra thought to herself that as the Crown Prince, he must enjoy flattery. So she admitted, I also think the Crown Prince is the most perfect man in the Empire. Even the Crown Prince couldn't handle such successive compliments. He covered his face, too embarrassed to make eye contact with Sierra. Seeing his shy and adorable demeanor, the girl couldn't help but laugh. After reaching their destination, the Crown Prince gentlemanly took Sierra's hand and walked towards the carriage. Let's go inside and choose Mid-Autumn Festival gifts. Type Happy Mid-Autumn Festival in the comment section to see the Mid-Autumn Festival special effects. As soon as they entered, the shop assistant approached with a smile. But when he recognized who they were, he became flustered. Seeing his reaction, Sierra guessed that Duval and the female lead must also be here ordering clothes. Taking the opportunity to embarrass the cheating couple in front of everyone, she smiled and told the shop assistant that she wanted to see if there were any suitable clothes for her. I'm very sorry, miss. The store is currently under renovation. The poor excuse made Sierra lose her patience. Weren't you welcoming when we first entered? And the store is so clean. Where exactly is it being renovated? Her powerful aura frightened everyone into silence. They didn't dare to obstruct the couple any further. Sierra smirked. Today, she was determined to make a scene. Afterwards, the shop assistant led them to the jewelry section. The Crown Prince immediately saw through their intention. We clearly said we were buying clothes when we entered. Now you're bringing us to choose accessories. I guess they don't want us to meet them. Sierra understood, but the purpose of this visit was to encounter the cheating couple. Suddenly, she struggled with how to address the Crown Prince. At this moment, the Crown Prince gently extended his hand to comfort her. Just call me Ray. His gentle and handsome appearance mesmerized the girl. All right, Ray. However, the tender scene was immediately disrupted. Duval, enraged, rushed over to question what they were doing here. Seeing that neither of them responded, Duval strode forward to confront Sierra. Is this guy really your lover? Hearing this, Sierra leaned against the Crown Prince's chest and smiled, admitting, our Ray and I are true lovers. Can't you see? Duval's face darkened. That's enough. I won't hold this against you. What right do you have to talk about holding things against me? Unexpectedly, the scumbag began to put on a show the next moment. Grabbing Sierra's hand, he swore, you will always be the only woman I love. The girl was startled by his shamelessness. She hurriedly stepped back. The Crown Prince couldn't stand it anymore and asked Duval if he had some mental illness. Unaware of the Crown Prince's identity, Duval immediately stepped forward, courting death, and began to berate the Crown Prince, pointing at his nose. Do you want to fight me? At the critical moment, Sierra intervened between the two. She noticed that the Crown Prince seemed to be taking his role too seriously. He was genuinely angry on her behalf. Just then, the green tea female lead joined the fray, wearing an elegant gown. Sierra saw her attire. She immediately recognized it as the dress for the engagement ceremony. She was utterly speechless about Duval. He was going to an engagement ceremony with the female lead, yet he came here to confess his love to her. Meanwhile, the female lead began to inquire about the Crown Prince's identity from Sierra. Sierra then realized that these two didn't know each other at all. She had suspected as much during their encounter at the cafe. It seemed that the marriage was probably arranged without them even meeting. Hearing the female lead's inquiry, the Crown Prince pulled Sierra, who was lost in thought, closer. He solemnly introduced himself to the cheating couple as Miss Ravelin's lover. Seeing the Crown Prince and Sierra flirting right in front of him, Duval was seething with anger. He grabbed Sierra's arm, saying, while I'm still being nice, hurry up and come back to me. The protective husband mode immediately activated as the Crown Prince shielded the girl. Where did you learn this habit of manhandling other people's lovers? Duval exploded in anger, cursing, get out of my way. I'm her fiancé. He completely forgot about the female lead beside him, wearing the engagement dress. She clutched her dress tightly, asking, "Young Master Aishit, what do you mean by that? What did you just say?" The scumbag turned around, wanting to explain, but Sierra didn't give him the chance. She approached the couple, adding fuel to the fire. "Young Master Aishit just came over inexplicably to confess to me, saying he still loves me now." The female lead immediately began to cry coquettishly. "Didn't you say you were going to get engaged to me?" The scumbag panicked instantly, saying that woman was making everything up. Sierra laughed. "How could I possibly lie to you, Tyrael? We're best friends, aren't we?" Seeing the situation spiraling out of control, Duval forcibly dragged the struggling female lead away from the scene. Finally, Sierra returned home, accompanied by the crown prince. Although she had gone there to cause trouble, she felt like the cheating couple had stolen the show. But looking at the results, it could be considered a success. At this moment, the crown prince suddenly asked, "How did the young lady end up engaged to such a fellow?" Sierra explained that it was arranged between the families, and she had no choice in the matter. The crown prince frowned upon hearing this. He guessed that the Aishit family wouldn't give up so easily. Sierra told the crown prince not to worry. After all, it was Duval who initially proposed to break off the engagement. Moreover, she had recorded everything with a magical device. The footage clearly showed Duval requesting to end the engagement. Afterwards, Sierra remembered something she was curious about. "Your Highness, were you and Tyrael discussing marriage without having met?" The crown prince's gaze wavered before he admitted that was indeed the case. "Then how did you feel when you saw Tyrael today? Did your heart start pounding?" Because in the original story, it was mentioned that the crown prince fell in love at first sight with Tyrael, who possessed purification powers. "My heart was indeed pounding because I was holding you in my arms at that time. Being able to say that I am the young lady's lover truly made me very happy." But this confession, which had been brewing for so long, was mistaken by Sierra as mere pleasantries. "I'm also very happy to be able to publicly declare that your highness is my lover. But you must be hoping for this pretend game to end quickly, right?" The crown prince reluctantly agreed, saying he hoped so. However, just when Sierra thought she would soon receive the annulment of the engagement, Duval barged into her room. With an arrogant face, he told Sierra that he would absolutely not cancel their engagement. Sierra had originally thought that her fiancé was just a bit foolish, but should still have some common sense. But now it seemed he was beyond help. She advised Duval not to waste his efforts. They had already reached the point of agreeing to end the engagement. What use was it now to say he had no intention of breaking it off? As she spoke, she took out a magical device and lightly tapped it. Instantly, the image of Duval embracing Tyrael in an arrogant manner appeared. Duval was startled upon seeing this scene. He grabbed the magical device and smashed it to pieces. Then he became arrogant again, saying, "Now that your evidence is gone, what will you do?" Sierra raised her chin disdainfully. She had more than just one such magical device in her possession. But what she didn't expect was that even with such evidence, Duval remained shamelessly thick-skinned. He actually said he wouldn't mind her finding a lover. "You should save those words for your fiancée, Tyrael," she retorted. However, the man interrupted her. "You are my only fiancée, Miss Sierra." Both fell silent for a moment. Finally, Sierra couldn't help but laugh. "Saying such things, one might think you're so pure and innocent. Since you won't write the engagement annulment letter, I'll do it for you." Duval didn't get angry upon hearing this. He only reminded Sierra, "Will your father agree to you canceling the engagement?" It turned out that the Ravelin family had once been in a very miserable state. It was only with the help of the Aishit family that they gradually regained their former glory. However, what Duval didn't know was that Sierra had considered this point long ago. So she gave the scumbag his marching orders. "Rather than threatening me here, you'd better go home and write the engagement annulment letter. You only have 3 weeks. If you exceed this time, don't even think about showing your face in social circles." Even the servant at the door warned Duval to leave quickly. Young Master Aishit should also know how terrifying the young lady's power is. Duval suppressed his anger. He told Sierra to just wait and see. Then he slammed the door shut as he left. At this moment, May cautiously peeked her head in. Seeing the glass scattered all over the floor, she rushed in to check if the young lady was hurt. As May cleaned up the debris, she informed Sierra, "The letter sent to Count Valentin earlier still hasn't received a reply." Count Valentin was the witness to her and Duval's engagement. To dissolve the engagement, his signature was necessary. Then May handed over a crumpled letter, saying it was also addressed to the young lady. However, the handwriting on it was as messy as a dog's scrawl, making it impossible to tell who had written it. Sierra took one look and immediately recognized it as Raid's handwriting. It stated that Count Valentin, in order to avoid signing the document, had already planned to escape. So he asked Aunt May to help him prepare some clothes for going out. He wanted to personally capture that old man who was preparing to flee. Later, he arrived at the park that Count Valentin frequently visited, waiting to ambush him. The Crown Prince, worried about his safety, accompanied him. Although Sierra insisted that it was just signing a document and there would be no danger, the Crown Prince still didn't dare to be careless. He had heard that the Aishit family and the Valentin family were quite close. As a result, the two of them waited for a full hour without seeing anyone. Seeing his beloved constantly gloomy about the matter of dissolving the engagement, the Crown Prince took Sierra's hand and walked out. He asked if she liked sweet things. Sierra was puzzled about what the Crown Prince was up to. Suddenly, she realized the Crown Prince's direction. It was actually towards that cotton candy stand. He bought a cotton candy for Sierra, telling her that eating sweets could improve her mood. Sierra found it strange and asked, "How do you know it's sweet? Do they have cotton candy in the palace too?" The Crown Prince patiently explained that although there was no cotton candy in the palace, he had heard many people mention it, so he knew it was sweet. Hearing the Crown Prince's words, the girl couldn't help but want to tease him a little. She told the Crown Prince that cotton candy should be washed to taste better and be healthier. So she handed the cotton candy to the Crown Prince, asking him to go to the fountain and wash it clean for her. The Crown Prince carefully plucked off a small piece of cotton candy. He cautiously put it into the water, but he found that the cotton candy disappeared instantly. Unable to complete the task, the dejected Crown Prince told Sierra that the cotton candy had vanished. Seeing the Crown Prince looking as pitiful as a little puppy, Sierra's eyes teared up from laughter at how adorable he was. The Crown Prince only then realized he had been tricked. And just as Sierra was wiping the tears from the corners of her eyes, her peripheral vision suddenly caught sight of a figure in the distance. It was Count Valentin, whom they had been looking for all along. Not long ago, Count Valentin had been preparing to escape under the cover of night. Suddenly, he felt a chill down his spine, as if someone was following him. Turning his head, he found Sierra. At first, he couldn't recognize who she was. Until Sierra spoke, "Count Valentin, I've been writing to you, but you never replied, so I came to find you myself." Realizing her intention, Count Valentin tried to escape in the opposite direction, but the other side had already been blocked by the Crown Prince. Caught between a rock and a hard place, Count Valentin was escorted to a small room by the two, but he kept looking for opportunities to escape. Sierra saw through his intentions and advised him to obediently sign the engagement dissolution document, or else he wouldn't be able to go anywhere. Seeing that even his only escape route was blocked by the Crown Prince, Count Valentin didn't beat around the bush. He stated directly that he could not possibly sign the engagement dissolution document. He even used the excuse that doing so would break the relationship between the three families. Sierra knew that their families had never been on good terms with the Count's family. She suspected that Duval had bribed Count Valentin in advance. But the Count insisted that he was only hoping for Duval and Sierra to reconcile. Sierra couldn't stand this pointless conversation anymore. Impatiently, she began to channel magic in her hand. If words wouldn't work, she'd have to resolve this problem her way. Count Valentin instantly panicked. Countless shadows around him seemed ready to drag him into hell. He begged for mercy like a madman, but there wasn't a trace of pity in the girl's eyes. The Crown Prince beside her noticed something was amiss. He rushed to stop Sierra. However, he wasn't concerned about Count Valentin's life. Instead, he worried that his beloved might faint from overexerting her magical power. Sierra came to her senses at the Crown Prince's call. Her head felt a bit dizzy. Even though she had only used a little magic, it seemed to have drained a lot of her energy. Seeing this, the Crown Prince suggested accompanying Sierra back to rest. After all, the Count wasn't someone who could be reasoned with. Sierra agreed. She would find other ways to dissolve the engagement. Nearby, Count Valentin, having survived the ordeal, was still muttering. Without a notary's signature, even the royal family couldn't dissolve an engagement so easily. The next day, Sierra returned to her guild. Holding the crown prince's doll in her hand, she realized that yesterday she had intended to use her abilities to get the Count's signature, but failed. Thinking carefully, if the crown prince hadn't stopped her then, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Sierra pinched the doll's little face. Although she was grateful to the crown prince, what should she do now? Her claim yesterday about having a solution was just a bluff. As Sierra pondered how Duval could have bribed Count Valentin, who owned the eastern gold mines, Raid entered, reporting that the guild had recently received a commission. They were asked to assist a woman in divorcing her cheating husband. Sierra opened a commission to look. She discovered that the cheating husband was none other than Count Valentin from last night. And the person Count Valentin was cheating with was Duval's sister, Layla. The girl was stunned. She hadn't expected Duval's sister to be as despicable as him. Then Raid handed over a magical artifact. It clearly recorded all the sordid details between Layla and Count Valentin. Raid wanted to add more details, but Sierra felt disgusted and told him to shut up immediately. At this moment, Sierra understood why Count Valentin favored Duval, and she immediately thought of a way to dissolve the engagement. After praising Raid, Sierra asked him to make preparations. She wanted to resolve this commission as quickly as possible. Soon after, the Aishit family held an art collection banquet. As soon as he saw Layla, Count Valentin began applauding with a beaming smile. But the Countess beside him wore a worried frown. She could only watch helplessly as her husband exchanged meaningful glances with Layla. Just then, a man approached the Countess. He whispered softly in her ear. Then he handed her a magical artifact. The next moment, Layla and Count Valentin both panicked simultaneously because their sordid affair was exposed in front of everyone present. All the guests began gossiping about their improper private lives. The Countess shed painful tears at this moment. Although she had long suspected it, when the truth was revealed, she still couldn't control her emotions. Count Valentin anxiously tried to explain that it was all a misunderstanding. But before he could make excuses, the Countess rushed out of the venue. And all of this was orchestrated by Sierra. After fleeing the venue, the Countess looked completely distraught. She was grateful that soon she would be able to divorce her good-for-nothing husband. Yet she still cried over the years of marital affection. Just as the Countess was about to return home to prepare divorce papers, Sierra called out to her from behind. As the head of an underground guild, she knew that scum like Count Valentin wouldn't give up so easily. So she invited the Countess back to her mansion to talk. But even she couldn't have imagined that the Count was a depraved individual beyond description. At first, Sierra thought this was just an ordinary commission. But when she noticed the scar at the corner of the Countess's eye, she understood the extent of the Count's violence. Originally, Count Valentin was just a commoner who married into the Valentin family's heiress. He had luckily inherited the Valentin family title to continue his life as a count. He had beaten his wife bloody more than once when she suggested divorce. Realizing this, Sierra urged the Countess to stay at her home so she could protect her. The Countess was very confused about this, wondering why Sierra, an outsider, would help her so much. Initially, Sierra only hoped the Countess could reclaim the Valentin name and sign for her. But seeing the Countess's haggard appearance, she couldn't help but recall the feeling of being betrayed by someone she trusted. Later, the Countess and Sierra made a written agreement. As long as the Count title was transferred to the Countess, it would be considered consent to sign the document dissolving Duval and Sierra's engagement. On the other side, the trio of scoundrels was getting restless. Duval couldn't understand why Sierra suddenly seemed like a different person. In the past, Sierra would always cater to his every whim. But now, she not only didn't care about his affair, she even brought a man 100 times more handsome than him to confront him. Duval lost control of his emotions and slammed his fist on the table. However, the other two members of the scoundrel trio were even more anxious. By now, the sordid affair between Layla and Count Valentin had spread throughout the empire. Duval was also at his wit's end. As the instigator who had brought his sister and Count Valentin together, he had to calm down and think of a countermeasure. If Count Valentin really got divorced, not only would his sister's reputation be affected, but the family's development would also be hindered. At this moment, Layla suggested retaliating in the same manner. If they could dig up some gossip about the Countess, perhaps the other side would let go of this matter. But Count Valentin knew that his wife was a person of few desires. Suddenly, he seemed to remember something. He thought to himself that his wife's weakness was feeling guilty about exposing him. So he proposed to Duval that since the incident had already occurred, they just needed to capture his wife and make her change her statement. In the evening, after a busy day, Sierra prepared for bed. But as she lay down, she felt like she had been forgetting something all along. It turned out to be the Crown Prince. Thinking back to earlier, the Crown Prince had been so accommodating to her. Whether it was going to the clothing store or following Count Valentin, he had agreed without hesitation. Yet she never had the chance to properly thank him. Sierra thought to herself, this man is too kind. But if he remained so kind, sooner or later he would be stabbed in the back by someone like her. After all, the Crown Prince was the kind of man who would believe even a lie about washing cotton candy. Sierra was just thinking about asking the Crown Prince if he needed any help, when suddenly, a letter appeared out of thin air before her eyes. Sierra opened the letter and read it. She couldn't help but let out a cold laugh. She never thought that the trio of scoundrels would ultimately choose such a ridiculous way to confront her. Over the next few days, the Countess's complexion noticeably improved. It must have been because separating from her vicious husband had changed her mood. However, Sierra knew from that night's letter that the other side's final struggle would occur tonight. Seeing a flash of worry cross the Countess's face, Sierra took her hand and told her not to worry. This place was the Revellins' mansion, and she alone was the entire Revellins. As descendants of the hero who defeated the dragon race, the Revellins' family controlled the evil spirit labyrinth. In this terrifying maze, countless evil spirits and monsters all obeyed the Ravlin's commands. But tonight, two thugs from the estate, under Count Valentin's orders, were heading to the Revellins' mansion to kidnap someone. The two quietly entered the Countess's room, carrying ropes. But to their surprise, there wasn't a single person on the bed. Suddenly, the men heard a sound and quickly turned their heads. "What are you doing in the middle of the night?" Sierra, dressed in a long black gown, sauntered towards them. She then muttered to herself, "I see. You're here to seek death, aren't you?" In an instant, black mist appeared around the men, frightening them into a hasty retreat. Little did they know that Sierra had already successfully released the evil spirit labyrinth. Sierra gently raised her hand. Immediately, countless evil spirits emerged, chasing after the two men. The terrifying aspect of this ability was that once inside the labyrinth, there was no escape. Moreover, even one's original abilities became unusable, just as the two men were complaining. The floor beneath their feet suddenly shattered. Immediately, countless evil spirits gushed forth, forcing the two men to continue their frantic escape. Seeing the screams of agony coming from the two in the crystal ball, Sierra showed no mercy. After all, those inhuman scoundrels' purpose this time was undoubtedly to tarnish the Countess with the stigma of adultery. Thinking of this, Sierra made up her mind. She was determined to make Count Valentin experience something 1,000 times more painful than losing his title through divorce. The next moment, a three-headed dog appeared before her. Although it looked terrifying, its bark sounded like the neighbor's puppy, which always left Sierra speechless. At this point, Sierra's vision began to blur. Because the evil spirit labyrinth was extremely draining on her physical and mental strength, Sierra ordered the three-headed dog to release the two men from earlier. But the three-headed dog refused, arguing that the two had only been there for an hour. Under Sierra's insistence, the three-headed dog brought the trembling pair before Sierra. "Tell me who sent you," she demanded. "If you're unwilling to speak, I don't mind sending you back into the labyrinth for another round." Meanwhile, Count Valentin was leisurely drinking on the other side. He believed from the bottom of his heart that his wife would soon be caught in adultery. The next moment, the tavern door was flung open with a bang. Under the Knight Commander's orders, Count Valentin was restrained by the knights. Brought before the Knight Commander, his crimes were announced. "Count Valentin, you are charged with domestic violence, threats, and stalking. You are hereby under arrest." The Countess, watching her husband being taken away, couldn't help but feel a twinge of bitterness, reflecting that it was finally over. But Sierra, standing beside her, stated that this was far from enough. For those who engage in affairs, they must experience true suffering. At this moment, Count Valentin in his cell still couldn't believe it, that his usually meek wife would actually do this to him. Suddenly, he turned his head. He saw his wife standing outside the cell, staring at him calmly. He rushed to the bars, begging for his wife's forgiveness, hoping she would bail him out with jewels and gold. However, the Countess's words left him feeling as if he'd fallen into an icy pit. "Let's get divorced. I no longer want to live with you." The man tried to grasp at this last lifeline, but his wife was resolute, stating that tomorrow she would hand over evidence of his affair to the authorities. As she spoke, she pulled out a document. "This is a deed gifting you the Valentin family property. Consider it my final act of goodwill towards you." The man snatched the document eagerly. His face revealed boundless greed. After he signed the document, he began to mock his wife's stupidity without restraint. The woman just listened silently, losing the last bit of trust in her husband. Then Sierra stepped out from the side, congratulating him on shouldering an enormous debt. Hearing this, Count Valentin thought she had lost her mind. The document clearly stated that all family property belonged to him. Sierra gently picked up the document from the ground. She reminded him, "Don't you know that debts are also property? You've been borrowing money everywhere. How much debt do you have? Soon, even the mines will stop operating." Count Valentin panicked and tried to beg for his wife's forgiveness again. However, seeing his pathetic state, Sierra laughed. She left the cell with the Countess without looking back. After the matter was settled, the Countess expressed her gratitude to Sierra, but Sierra only said that she had done what needed to be done. She was glad that the Countess could live freely in the future. However, at that moment, her vision suddenly blurred. She then collapsed heavily to the ground, unconscious. When she woke up again, it was already several days later. As soon as May saw that the young lady was awake, she hurried forward to inquire about her condition. Sierra hadn't expected the aftereffects of using her ability to be so severe this time. Her head was still dizzy, feeling as if it might explode at any moment. Suddenly, she heard someone shouting outside the mansion. May explained that it was Duval, who had been demanding to see the young lady for days. Seeing Sierra's irritated expression, May prepared to call someone to drive the scumbag away. Sierra was very clear about Duval's purpose for coming. Because of this adultery incident, his sister had to pay a fine of 1 billion gold coins. This sum was a considerable burden, even for the Aishit family. But what did the scumbag's affairs have to do with her? Sierra lay back down on the bed, preparing to sleep. However, after she fell asleep, a giant dragon suddenly appeared in her room. She was awakened by the sound while lying in bed. Seeing an unexplained shadow by the bed, Sierra sat up abruptly in panic. She found the Crown Prince standing by her bedside. She called out, "Your Highness," in confusion. Seeing the girl awake, the Crown Prince anxiously explained that he wasn't a pervert. He just saw her window open and wanted to come in to close it for her. However, with her head still foggy, Sierra thought this was a dream. She wondered if she had been playing with the Crown Prince's doll too much, causing her to dream about him. Since it was a dream, the girl suddenly became bold. She patted the bed, inviting the Crown Prince to sit down and chat with her. However, the Crown Prince noticed the girl's nightgown. He bashfully turned his head away, thinking this might not be appropriate. He then bid farewell to Sierra, saying, "Now that I see the young lady is fine, I'm relieved. I'll come to visit formally tomorrow morning." Hearing the Crown Prince's refusal, Sierra stared at him expressionlessly. She thought, "This is my dream. Why isn't he listening to me?" She patted the bed again, inviting the Crown Prince to sit down. Left with no choice, the Crown Prince chose a spot at the foot of the bed, about 800 meters away from Sierra. As he sat down, he once again bashfully explained to Sierra. He said he was just worried about her discomfort, so he wanted to come in and check. "But this is the 3rd floor. How'd you get in?" Sierra asked, but then remembered this was a dream, so there was no need to dwell on such details. Then she heard the Crown Prince say he flew in. The girl was stunned. "Are you dreaming? Or am I dreaming? Or perhaps, Your Highness, are you actually a magician?" The Crown Prince felt helpless. Although he wasn't a magician, he could indeed fly. Unexpectedly, Sierra directly asked him to demonstrate his flying ability. However, what the Crown Prince dreaded most was exposing his evil dragon curse. So he could only make excuses, saying it was a bit difficult right now. "Why, can't you fly here?" "No, it's not because of that." But hearing the Crown Prince say this only piqued Sierra's curiosity further. So she came up with a plan. She suddenly coughed twice. Then, while coughing, she said she had a disease where she would keep coughing unless she saw the Crown Prince fly. Seeing this, the Crown Prince immediately rushed forward to comfort her. "Don't say more. I'll show you right away. The crown prince turned his gaze to the side. He was afraid of seeing a look of disgust on Sierra's face. Actually, I flew up here after transforming into an evil dragon. You've always wanted to see me perform a talent, but I hope you won't distance yourself from me after seeing me turn into an evil dragon. However, to his surprise, Sierra just smiled faintly. She even said that seeing a dragon was her childhood dream. The crown prince's anxious heart eased a little. Then he began his transformation into an evil dragon. Waves of black mist, symbolizing evil, enveloped him. Seeing this scene, Sierra recalled the description of the evil dragon from the original story. It was described as a dangerous black light, engulfing the suffering crown prince. In the end, the evil dragon would destroy everything in the palace. By then, the entire continent would fall into endless despair. But when the crown prince completed his transformation, Sierra saw a tiny black dragon hatchling with tender chicken wings and round little claws. Sierra immediately covered her mouth in shock. Is this the evil dragon from the original story that could destroy the continent? It was said that just the flap of the evil dragon's wings could cause dozens of deaths. But looking at it now, it seemed more likely to cause death by cuteness overload. Your Highness, can I touch you? The black dragon gurgled in response. The girl then realized that the crown prince couldn't speak in this state. The tiny dragon hatchling nuzzled against her hand without restraint. Sierra suddenly asked, Your Highness, can you breathe fire? Seeing her eyes sparkle with anticipation, the crown prince obediently breathed fire to amuse her. Then, whether it was spewing acidic gas or ice, he obliged her every request. At this point, Sierra had a mischievous thought. She lifted the evil dragon to her face, declaring she would capture and keep it as a pet for life. Hearing this, the crown prince began to struggle in Sierra's hands. After playing for a while, Sierra felt dizzy again. The evil dragon gurgled with concern. It helped tuck Sierra in with a blanket. Sierra instructed him not to leave, to stay with her until dawn. So the crown prince rested his head on Sierra's arm and slept through the night. He only quietly left the next morning. Meanwhile, at a grand villa in the south, Sierra's father was preparing to return home to help organize his daughter's wedding. The red-haired woman beside him paused briefly upon hearing this. She then smiled in agreement, saying she too would love to see her daughter in a wedding dress. But in her heart, she was scheming. Once Sierra married into the Aishit family, no one could compete with her son for the position of marquis. However, just as she was about to inform her son of this news, a carrier pigeon suddenly arrived with a letter. The woman wondered what could be so urgent. Upon opening the letter, she discovered it was news of Sierra and Duval's engagement being called off. Meanwhile, the female lead, upon hearing this news, went to Duval's residence. She naively thought Duval would be as happy as she was. After all, he had promised to get engaged to her once his engagement to Sierra ended. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but ponder over the location for their engagement ceremony. She wondered if she should wear the gown Duval had personally helped her choose. But when the servant brought her before Duval, he coldly told her to get lost. You really have no sense. How dare you come here? Hearing this, the female lead anxiously explained that she had just heard about the young master and Sierra ending their engagement, so she came to discuss when to hold their engagement ceremony. Duval stood up with a cold smirk. Why should I get engaged to you? At this point, the female lead was still naive, bringing up Duval's past promise. Young master said that once he sorted things out with Sierra, he would marry me. Duval couldn't believe how stupid this woman was. He impatiently explained, You were nothing but a tool to attract Sierra's attention. Only then did the female lead realize that all those sweet words in the past were just an act. She wasn't even a substitute for Sierra. She collapsed powerlessly to the ground, still muttering. But the young master said, I was the one he loved. She reluctantly asked Duval, Even if Sierra has always wanted to escape from you, to break off the engagement, do you still like her? Can't you just give up on Sierra and choose me instead? She looked every bit the pitiful damsel in distress. But Duval, being the scoundrel he was, had long since become immune to such fawning women. He made no effort to hide his disgust and contempt, saying, I would never like someone like you. His cold words deeply wounded the female lead's heart, yet she still refused to give up, even thinking of imitating Sierra to win Duval's affection. How preposterous. I already thought you were annoying enough, Duval said as he turned to leave, his disgust for the female lead now at its peak. He then ordered his servants to remove that thing and never let it appear before him again. Meanwhile, on the other side, Sierra was sweetly taking a stroll with the Crown Prince. Has Sierra been sleeping well lately? You look much better than when I last saw you. Sierra couldn't help but wonder, wasn't their last meeting when they were tracking Count Valentin? Suddenly, a large hand reached out. It gently pressed against the girl's forehead to check her temperature. Indeed, you don't have a fever anymore. This casual gesture reminded Sierra of her dream that night. Back then, the Crown Prince had also touched her forehead in the same manner. At this point, she coughed shyly twice, which again worried the Crown Prince. Miss, why is your face so red? Are you running a fever again? The girl explained, it's just too hot. Then, with a relaxed expression, she continued, now that all those complicated matters have been resolved smoothly, I haven't felt this at ease in a long time. Being able to meet your highness in this state truly makes me happy. The Crown Prince was so captivated that it took him a while to stammer out, I missed you too. Not long ago, I was constantly worried about what I would do if you distanced yourself from me. The girl was puzzled by the Crown Prince's words. Why would I distance myself from your highness? But the next second, a handsome face was right in front of her. Then let's be even closer from now on. His words carried an air of dominance that left the girl no room to refuse. The Crown Prince then helped Sierra put on a bracelet as a gift to commemorate the end of her engagement. Sierra raised her hand, delighted to see the exquisite bracelet, but she also wanted to try and reciprocate somehow. Your Highness, she inquired, how are things progressing with Tyrael? She didn't notice the Crown Prince's expression change. His face instantly turned cold. The Crown Prince lowered his head and explained, it's a bit complicated. A troublesome person has gotten involved, so it will take some time to resolve. As he spoke, he asked Sierra to continue maintaining their lovers' relationship. Sierra mistakenly believed that the troublesome person the Crown Prince referred to as Duval, so she agreed. She assured the Crown Prince not to worry, saying she would find a way to restore his relationship with Tyrael. Just as Sierra thought the Crown Prince had invited her out to extend their lovers' period, he suddenly handed her an invitation. Sierra's expression changed upon seeing it. It was an invitation to the Red Full Moon Festival. In the original story, the Crown Prince would publicly transform into a giant dragon during this festival, because on this day, the evil dragon's power would greatly increase. People had long lived in fear because of this. So the royal family would always hold sacrificial ceremonies, praying to the gods not to let the evil dragon revive. And to ease the anxiety of the empire's citizens, the Red Full Moon Festival was thus formed. Everyone treated this day as a routine event, but only Sierra, who knew the original story, understood. The Crown Prince would transform into an evil dragon on this day, throwing the empire into chaos. At that time, it was thanks to the female lead Tyrael's purification power that the crisis was averted. Sierra didn't have this ability. She couldn't help but consider whether to lock the Crown Prince in a cage. Her worried expression was caught by the Crown Prince. He asked Sierra with concern, have you not fully recovered? Although this festival requires the founding hero's family to attend, if you're not feeling well, I'll find a way to help you. Sierra explained that she was fine. Then, while signing the invitation, she asked the Crown Prince, will your highness also attend this festival? After all, it's the Red Full Moon that day. I feel it might be safer if you don't go out. But the Crown Prince expressed that he had long wanted to attend this festival with Sierra. He felt that going on a date at the festival would be different from usual. Sierra helplessly covered her face. At a time like this, he was still fixated on the idea of a date. Just as she was pondering how to remind the Crown Prince of the severity of the situation, the Crown Prince grasped her hand, which was trembling from anxiety. I know what you're worried about, Mississippi, but I won't let such a thing happen. I hope you can trust me. Sierra looked into the Crown Prince's eyes and gradually calmed down. Then the Crown Prince extended an invitation to the girl. So, for this Red Full Moon Festival, would you like to go on a date with me, miss? A few days later, the Red Full Moon Festival was held as scheduled. Sierra, however, was flushed red from the Crown Prince's bold actions. It turned out that not long ago, to reciprocate the bracelet gift, Sierra had personally embroidered a handkerchief for the Crown Prince. Unexpectedly, since then, the Crown Prince had been deliberately displaying the handkerchief every day. He even planned to enshrine it as a national treasure. Sierra, embarrassed, asked the Crown Prince to hide this failed product. But the Crown Prince insisted that anything Sierra embroidered was a treasure. The two flirted like a normal couple. Sierra was no longer as worried as she had been in the past few days, because the Crown Prince had told her that the temple had already produced a potion that could suppress the evil dragon's power. Just then, Sierra heard a commotion behind her. It was a theater selling tickets for a play called The Legend of the Evil Dragon. Sierra wasn't particularly interested in this, but the surging crowd kept pushing forward, and before they knew it, the two of them were squeezed into the audience seats of the theater. Since they were already there, they decided to watch for a while before leaving. This play was about an evil dragon who had a woman he deeply loved, but the woman was wicked. She used the evil dragon's power to dominate the world. In the end, people attributed all the crimes to the wicked woman and executed her. Afterward, the evil dragon, having lost his sanity, took revenge on the entire world and left the cruelest curse on the hero. At first, Sierra thought this was the story of how the first emperor defeated the evil dragon. She recalled that the evil dragon's curse had continued to this day for over 1,000 years. This made her somewhat envious. Could it be that this curse was waiting for the wicked woman's soul to awaken again? Before she knew it, the girl fell asleep. In her dream, she saw a golden dragon. Before Sierra could react, the golden dragon nuzzled her face affectionately. Although Sierra was somewhat confused, for some reason, she didn't feel any aversion. She even stroked the dragon with her hand. Suddenly, she was startled. She stood up abruptly, muttering, "Stop it, you pervert dragon." When Sierra came to her senses, she realized the Crown Prince was holding her hand. "I saw that you were sleeping deeply, Mississippi. I was afraid you might fall, so I held your hand. I didn't mean to upset you." The girl explained that she had just been dreaming, and those words weren't meant for him. Seeing Sierra's embarrassment, the Crown Prince found it amusing. This pervert apologizes. After the play ended, the sky gradually darkened. The Crown Prince asked if the play had been so boring that it put the young lady to sleep. Sierra became embarrassed again. "I was just resting my eyes for a moment. So, what did you think of the play's content?" After pondering for a moment, Sierra told him that she actually envied the wicked woman. She could receive eternal love from the dragon. Moreover, for the wicked woman, perhaps conquering the world wasn't the most important thing. She would be content just having a dragon who loved her forever. These words made the Crown Prince, who was the evil dragon, feel a flutter in his heart. He was about to confess to Sierra, when unexpectedly, a fearless scoundrel appeared before them, standing up for his love interest. The Crown Prince used his abilities for the first time during the red full moon. This immediately subjected him to the effects of the curse. However, to the girl's surprise, the Empire's terrifying evil dragon turned out to be an adorably cute black dragon cub. Not long ago, Duval had barged into Sierra and the Crown Prince's date. He even had the audacity to threaten them both. Sierra was exasperated. "Why are you here looking for me? We have no relationship anymore." Hearing this, Duval's heart sank, and his face instantly darkened. He then walked straight up to the Crown Prince, challenging him to meet in the small forest later. Duval believed it was the Crown Prince's appearance that had led to the current situation. As he spoke, he forcefully squeezed the Crown Prince's arm. "Look at these skinny arms and legs. Are you too scared to be alone with me? Is it because of your low status that you're trying to climb up Sierra's social ladder?" Sierra's expression changed. She couldn't believe this fool dared to speak to the Crown Prince like that. She angrily berated Duval, telling him to get lost. But to Sierra's surprise, the Crown Prince actually accepted Duval's proposal. Sierra anxiously reminded the Crown Prince that the red full moon would rise soon. But then her hand was gently taken by the Crown Prince. "I'll be fine, Mississippi. I told you I have a way to deal with it." Seeing this, Sierra said no more, only asking the Crown Prince to return quickly. The moment the Crown Prince turned his head, the gentle expression he had while facing Sierra instantly vanished. "As you wish. Let's talk, just the two of us." After the two arrived at the small forest, Duval initiated a verbal attack. "I saw Sierra buying you clothes last time. What, can't you even afford a single piece of clothing?" As he spoke, he had already labeled the other party in his mind as a pretty boy trying to climb the social ladder. I can give you however much money you want. Just take it and get away from Sierra. The Crown Prince gave no response to this. At this moment, Duval was still reveling in his verbal assault. The next second, his pupils involuntarily contracted, and he wore an expression of pain. He then nearly collapsed to the ground. Suddenly, he found himself unable to breathe, only able to alleviate the pain through constant coughing. Just as he was regretting provoking such a terrifying being, the Crown Prince's voice came, "I agree with you. I absolutely won't tolerate a scum like you staying by Sierra's side." As soon as he finished speaking, Duval found that the previous pain had disappeared. But before he could feel relieved, he met the crimson pupils of the man before him. The other looked down at him from above. "If I wanted to, I could take your life at any moment. But I don't want Sierra to see such a scene." The Crown Prince ordered Duval to stand up. "I can give you one more chance." After hearing the command, Duval found that he couldn't control his body. He could only let the other manipulate him. "Before I hurt you, get away from me immediately. When you go back, forget everything that happened today." Seeing Duval walking further and further away, the Crown Prince thought to himself that this time he should have thoroughly dealt with this scum. But the next moment, he felt a severe headache. Due to the influence of the red full moon, the Crown Prince's heartbeat was also getting faster and faster. He hadn't expected that using just that little bit of power would nearly make him unable to suppress the evil dragon force within him. He immediately reached into his inner lining to fetch the potion. Trembling, he brought the potion to his lips, but the man's hand was now shaking uncontrollably. In the end, the potion fell to the ground and shattered. Meanwhile, Sierra was still waiting at the original spot for the Crown Prince to return. She thought that someone like Duval, who only knew how to shout and scream, couldn't possibly do anything to the Crown Prince. But for some reason, she felt restless and uneasy. Suddenly, she noticed that the surroundings were unusually quiet. She instantly became panicked, because logically, Duval should have been crying out in pain for being beaten by the Crown Prince. But now, not a sound could be heard. Realizing this, she hurriedly ran towards the direction of the forest. As she ran, she called out the Crown Prince's name. But no matter how long she called, there was no response. Suddenly, Sierra discovered the scattered fragments of the potion on the ground, as well as the Crown Prince's clothes. Just as she thought the Crown Prince had met with misfortune, a giant dragon's silhouette completely enveloped the girl. Sierra broke out in a cold sweat at the sight. She never imagined that the evil dragon destined to destroy the Empire would appear right behind her. Frightened, she quickly covered her head and screamed. But the dragon's attack never came. When she opened her eyes, she saw a silly-looking black dragon hatchling staring at her happily. Only then did the girl remember that the black dragon hatchling from that night was indeed the Crown Prince. The evil dragon that everyone feared was actually an adorably cute black dragon hatchling. After noticing him, Sierra immediately recalled the dream from that night. The evil dragon the Crown Prince had turned into looked exactly like this. So she hid the dragon hatchling in her clothes and took him home. The servants were startled to see the young lady looking so disheveled. Although Sierra insisted she was fine, her maid May became suspicious of the men's formal where Sierra was holding. It was supposed to be just a date, yet the young lady looked as if she had been rolling on the ground. Seeing that May was about to say something inappropriate, Sierra hurriedly fled. Behind her, May's exasperated advice continued to echo. "Young lady, remember, it's only dating if you've kissed. Don't let that kind of man toy with your feelings." With a loud bang, she shut the door. This unusual behavior made May even more certain that the young lady was hiding something. Back in her room, Sierra quickly lifted her clothes to let the dragon hatchling breathe. Seeing that he didn't look uncomfortable or in pain, Sierra breathed a sigh of relief. Then, to clear up her doubts, Sierra handed the dragon hatchling some paper and a pen. She hoped he could write down how to return to his original form. The dragon hatchling immediately began scribbling on the paper. As he was writing, Sierra leaned in for a closer look. On the paper were clearly written the words, "Kiss, kiss." Could it be that a kiss would return him to his original form? But the dragon hatchling shook his head. Then, with a reddened face, he continued writing. "Do you also think that only after kissing can we be true lovers?" Sierra was dumbfounded. Even as a tiny dragon, the Crown Prince was still thinking about such things. At this moment, Sierra realized that the Crown Prince probably hadn't taken the potion. She thought about reporting this to the royal family. But hearing this, the dragon hatchling immediately wrote a serious reply on the paper. Don't tell the royal family. It seemed the Crown Prince could maintain his rationality even after transforming into an evil dragon. Currently, only Sierra knew about this. Moreover, even without the red full moon, the Crown Prince could freely change his form. Sierra's worried heart finally eased. Seeing the dragon hatchling's hand turn red from writing just a few words, she figured he probably couldn't go anywhere else. So Sierra suggested that he could stay at her house until he turned back into human form. This way, at least he wouldn't encounter any danger. Even if something happened, he could use his abilities to handle it. The little pervert dragon agreed with a blushing face. Just then, there was a knock at the door. It was Aunt May coming to collect Sierra's dirty clothes. But suddenly, she heard Sierra's startled cry. She quickly opened the door to check on the young lady's safety. But what she saw was a black dragon pouncing towards the young lady's chest. May's brain short-circuited on the spot. Sierra didn't know how to explain. The black dragon hatchling darted out from her arms. It used magic on May. Soon, May's gaze became vacant. She then foolishly asked Sierra where the young lady had gotten such a flying lizard. As she spoke, she reached out to touch it, but was swatted away by its tail. May immediately looked hurt. Young lady, do you really want to keep such a fierce pet? Sierra awkwardly explained. He listens to me. Hearing this, the dragon hatchling immediately climbed obediently onto Sierra's hand. It even nuzzled against her chest without restraint. It seems to be a lizard that recognizes its master, May teased before turning to leave. After May left, Sierra asked the dragon hatchling if it was a mind-altering magic. With magic, she could boldly take the dragon hatchling out. However, since it was too troublesome to communicate with a notebook outside, Sierra suggested using symbols for communication in the future. 2 circles would mean affirmative. This one would mean negative. Finally, if feeling troubled or sad, this symbol could be used. The little dragon nodded in agreement. Then it gently placed its small claw on Sierra's hand. Soon it was time to sleep. Sierra carried the dragon hatchling to a guest room. She placed the dragon hatchling on the bed, then tucked him in with a blanket. She noticed the dragon hatchling blushing. Sierra warned him, even if your highness is now a cute little dragon, things that shouldn't be done are still not allowed. With that, she closed the door. Early the next morning, Sierra worried about what dragons should eat for breakfast. After much thought, she decided to ask him directly. However, she was stopped midway by a servant who said there was an urgent message from the Marquis in the south. Sierra opened the letter and read it. Her expression instantly turned cold. Her father was forcing her to get re-engaged to Duval, or else she'd be expelled from the family. Her stepbrother would inherit the title instead. Her father was forcing his daughter to marry a notorious scoundrel. In the past, when Sierra was engaged to Duval, her father had persuaded her to consider the bigger picture, citing the need for the Aishit family's help. For this, the girl had worked desperately to earn money. The money she earned for the family, even the entire wealth of the Aishit family, couldn't offset it. Yet her father still wanted to expel her from the family, even claiming it was for her own good. Seeing her father's clumsy excuses, Sierra's heart was filled with resentment and anger. And she finally realized that her father was determined to pass the title to her stepbrother. The little dragon stared blankly at Sierra. Unable to speak in his temper, he hugged her arm to comfort her. This simple gesture slightly eased the girl's mood. Sierra confided in the dragon, hatchling about what to do in such a situation. She had always believed she was constantly improving, yet in an instant she was back to square one. She still couldn't let go. It seemed as if all her long-term efforts had been in vain. The dragon hatchling in her arms knew it was time to step in. He took Sierra's hand and placed his small claw on her palm. The next moment, the life coach black dragon hatchling came online. Going back to square one isn't necessarily a bad thing. This might be an opportunity for you to regain what you've lost before. Sierra, as long as you're determined, you can achieve anything. The previous worries were instantly dispelled by the dragon hatchling's words. Seeing Sierra's spirits lift, the relaxed dragon hatchling couldn't help but yawn. Sierra, noticing this, quickly picked him up. Was it because of him that she had stayed up so late? She was about to take him back to his room, but the dragon hatchling clung tightly to Sierra's hand. Refusing to let go, Sierra knew this little pervert dragon wanted to sleep with her again. The dragon hatchling in her arms had sparkling eyes, not hiding his desire and anticipation at all. Sierra was finally moved by his adorable appearance. She agreed that they could sleep together, but only for tonight. However, in the middle of the night, the dragon hatchling quietly crawled out of bed. He left a gentle kiss on the forehead of his beloved girl. Then he flew out of the room, looking at the sleeping Sierra on the bed. The dragon hatchling was extremely reluctant to leave. He knew his identity would bring disaster to her. To reassure Sierra, the dragon hatchling left a note. He would appear when Sierra needed him most. The next day, Sierra saw the note left on the table. She didn't understand why Ray had left without any explanation. Although in the following days, Sierra continued to live normally in the guild, secretly handling various commissions. She was always worried whether Ray would return. On the day of the royal ball, May happily presented Sierra with the most luxurious jewelry. "Young lady, since you're going alone this time, you must be more beautiful than any other lady at the ball. That man who used to date you, who knows where he's gone? He didn't even send a letter." Sierra awkwardly explained that perhaps his identity made it inconvenient to appear. To her surprise, May became even more agitated. She gritted her teeth and said she would definitely teach him a lesson. Before Sierra could react, May grabbed her and helped her with her makeup and attire. Soon, they arrived at the ball venue. "Miss Sierra Ravelins has arrived." This simple announcement attracted the gaze of many noble gentlemen. Accompanied by the sound of high heels clicking on the floor, Sierra appeared before everyone, holding a folding fan. As she entered the hall, the nobles noticed she had no companion. They immediately began to gossip maliciously. Everyone believed that without Ashette's support, the Ravelins family was of no consequence. But Sierra didn't care. She knew these mediocre people only saw the surface. And soon, she would completely transform the Ravelins family status. Just then, an announcement from outside caught everyone's attention. Duke Epshulity has arrived. The crowd buzzed with discussion about this unfamiliar ducal family. Even Sierra, who was well-versed in social circles, had never heard of them. But when they saw the Duke, everyone seemed to fall under a spell. They bowed to the Duke, but he ignored them all and walked straight toward Sierra. When the Duke stopped in front of Sierra and greeted her, Sierra finally reacted, lifting her skirt to curtsy in return. Then the Duke extended his hand, inviting Sierra for a private conversation. Somehow, Sierra accepted his proposal, because she inexplicably felt that the man before her was familiar. The love-struck crown prince, in order to see his beloved girl, had actually transformed himself to have black hair and red eyes. This way, he wouldn't have to hide when standing beside his love. On the balcony, the Duke casually asked Sierra why she had come to the ball alone. She explained that she originally had a partner, but circumstances had changed. The Duke pressed further. "Who did you hope would come with you?" "Someone who looks very much like you, Duke." Hearing this, the Duke invited Sierra to attend the full moon festival ball together. Sierra agreed, even she didn't know why she had accepted. Then the Duke confessed to Sierra, "Actually, I've been by your side all along." Before Sierra could comprehend the meaning of these words, the Duke pulled her into his embrace. "Look at me carefully. Sierra, I don't understand what you're saying." "Ray, no, Duke Epshulity." Sierra felt a throbbing pain in her head, leaving her thoughts in chaos. It turned out that the reason she couldn't distinguish the man before her was because he had used a charm spell, and his purpose for doing this was simply to be with Sierra. After all, there were still a few people in the palace who had seen his face, but from now on, he wouldn't hide anything from her. The crown prince gently caressed the girl's cheek, pulling her completely into his arms. "Please trust me." Suddenly, Sierra caught a whiff of a fragrance. When she came to her senses, she found herself intimately pressed against the Duke. He had a look as if he wanted to devour her, causing her heart to race and her face to flush instantly. Then Sierra saw the shadow of the crown prince in the Duke. She called out Ray in a daze. The Duke smiled faintly, silently confirming that he was indeed the crown prince. Unexpectedly, Sierra grabbed his collar the next moment, reproaching him for leaving without saying a word beforehand. The crown prince's heart was inexplicably moved by the girl's actions. It turned out that Sierra had been worried about him all along, but he hadn't anticipated that no matter how he tried to calm Sierra down, it was in vain. Left with no choice, the Crown Prince simply pulled the girl into his embrace once more. "Now, do you know who I am?" he asked, his tone tinged with a hint of playfulness. Hearing this, Sierra tremblingly let go of her grip. She couldn't believe that she had been clutching the Crown Prince's collar all this time. She wondered if she should jump off the balcony before being arrested and executed for disrespecting the royal family. Moreover, her earlier ramblings made her want to die of embarrassment. But what she didn't know was that her adorably flustered appearance was fully appreciated by the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince teased, "My lady, you were so worried about me that you couldn't sleep well. How could I possibly punish you?" This made the girl blush from head to toe in an instant. Subsequently, Sierra learned from the Crown Prince that he would continue to appear in this guise for some time, because this way, he could help the young lady. Although the young lady could handle various matters on her own, it was always more reassuring to have someone by her side. "Isn't that right?" he said, extending his hand to Sierra. The two returned to the ball, arm in arm. Meanwhile, in the ballroom, two nobles noticed figures approaching from a distance. Seeing their attire, they both mistakenly assumed it was Miss Ravelin's and eagerly greeted them. But when they realized their mistake, they hurriedly apologized. "I'm sorry, we mistook you for someone else." As the woman's silhouette faded into the distance, the two nobles began to mock her openly, saying she must have lost her mind. That woman, who resembled Sierra, was actually the female lead, Tiliel. She was frantically searching for any trace of Sierra. Suddenly, she whirled around, spotting Sierra returning with the Duke. She revealed a twisted smile, deliberately blocking their path. She greeted Sierra. "I've been looking for you for so long, Sierra." But Sierra was startled to see her. The female lead, Tiliel, was wearing an identical gown to hers. "Have you ever met such a friend? Someone who always chooses you, no matter what they do. Not only does she wear the same clothes as you, but she even wants to share the same boyfriend." It turned out that in the past, Tiliel had always lived in the slums. Every day, she had to endure the biting cold wind and severe hunger. Then suddenly one day, a miracle descended upon her. Sierra, like a goddess, lifted her out of the mire. From that moment on, the girl was deeply captivated by her, dreaming of becoming someone just like her. In Tiliel's eyes, Sierra's every move exuded confidence. Even her standing posture was exceptionally perfect, and she had a fiancé from a prominent family. To gradually get closer to such an outstanding Sierra, Tiliel decided to imitate her, starting with the simplest hair accessories and clothing. Then, the affection of her fiancé. However, no matter how hard she tried, Sierra was always the most dazzling presence among everyone. At this moment, when Sierra saw the female lead Tiliel, she couldn't help but feel uneasy. She didn't understand why Tiliel was wearing an identical gown of hers and looking so satisfied about it. This would do her no good, only making her the laughingstock of social circles. Just as she was pondering Tiliel's intentions, the latter approached first, expressing her desire to chat. "Just like before, the two of us warmly together. You'll agree to it, right?" Tiliel said, tightly grasping Sierra's hand. People around immediately began to gossip in hushed tones. Left with no choice, Sierra agreed for the two of them to talk privately on the balcony. The Crown Prince, worried about what might happen, offered to accompany Sierra, but Sierra refused, believing that Tiliel's personality wouldn't allow her to harm her. Seeing the Crown Prince still uneasy, Sierra could only reassure him that she would return quickly. Besides, her abilities were more than enough to handle Tiliel. Soon, the two arrived at the balcony. Sierra noticed that not only the gown, but even the accessories were identical to hers. So she asked about the purpose of such attire. Unexpectedly, Tiliel burst into laughter. Excitedly, she told Sierra that she had scoured every shop, buying everything Sierra had ever purchased. Unfortunately, this gown was one of a kind, so she had a tailor specially make one as similar as possible. Before Sierra could express her shock, Tiliel added that the money was well spent. "How about it? Don't I look just like you? This way, everyone will think we're still as close as before." Sierra instantly felt a chill run down her spine. She told Tiliel to stop talking nonsense. As soon as she finished speaking, Tiliel, as if gone mad, grabbed Sierra's hand. "Forgive me, I know you're angry about the Ashed incident, but now I have nothing to do with young Master Ashed anymore. We could go back to how we were before, right?" Sierra's wrist ached from Tiliel's grip, yet Tiliel still refused to let go, saying if even Sierra abandoned her, she would have nothing left. Sierra wrenched her hand free. She let out a cold laugh at Tiliel. "The one who ruined our relationship was. But now you feel like you have no one around you, so you've come running back to me." Hearing this, Tiliel frantically tried to explain to Sierra, "Actually, I've always." However, without giving her a chance to continue, Sierra told her first, "Even if you've broken up with Duval, the relationship between us can never be mended." Tiliel felt as if the sky had fallen. She didn't know what to do with her future. But Sierra's merciless words came again. "Let's not meet anymore in the future. I'm no longer that person who cleans up your messes every day." With that, she turned to leave. However, the next moment, Tiliel lunged at her, begging her not to go. But this pushed Sierra out onto the balcony. Just as Sierra was about to fall from the balcony, the Crown Prince rushed out from the side, pulling Sierra back just in time. This commotion attracted the attention of the onlookers at the ball. Hearing the chaotic discussions around, the Crown Prince advised Tiliel to leave. But not only did she refuse to listen, she accused the Crown Prince of meddling, saying this was between her and Sierra. "What right do you have to interfere?" The Crown Prince's expression darkened. "Aren't you the pot calling the kettle black? If I hadn't shown up in time, the consequences would have been unthinkable." With that, he turned to leave with Sierra. As they left, Sierra glanced back at Tiliel. This look made Tiliel finally realize that Sierra was thoroughly disappointed in her. She called out Sierra's name, but Sierra turned her head away, leaving Tiliel alone, surrounded by the criticizing onlookers. She had rescued the female lead trapped in the slums, but it nearly brought her mortal peril. She said she just wanted to help the female lead once, to escape her own tragic ending. Unexpectedly, the female lead turned out to be a Yandere with a dark side, not only imitating her in dress, but even her fiancé. She wanted to compete for everything just to get closer to Sierra, whom she admired. However, after Sierra completely severed ties with the female lead, Tiliel, the female lead, turned to the dark side. Now that both young Master Ashed and Sierra had abandoned her, she had no one left by her side. Yet Sierra could gain everyone's love. Tiliel was so jealous she was nearly driven mad. Just then, a maid approached Tiliel, saying that a noble person wanted to see her. Tiliel initially wanted to dismiss this woman who couldn't read the atmosphere, but suddenly noticed the emblem on her clothes. It was the symbol representing the Empress. The maid also told her that the noble person was very sympathetic to the young lady's situation. "Please come with me to meet them." And so, Tiliel, who had nowhere else to turn, successfully attached herself to the Empress. Meanwhile, the ritual to curse and revive the evil dragon was held as scheduled. Being such an important event, only members of the founding families could attend. Sierra was worried that the female lead might do something outrageous again. But to her surprise, the female lead behaved impeccably throughout the event. It wasn't until the ritual ended smoothly that Sierra finally breathed a sigh of relief. However, her exhausted expression still caught the Crown Prince's concern. Although Sierra insisted she was fine, seeing the blue and purple scratches on Sierra's hand, the Crown Prince's heart ached. He comforted Sierra, saying she had done nothing wrong in this matter. He told her to go home early and rest, and not to overthink things. Before boarding the carriage home, Sierra thanked the Crown Prince. "I know that everything Ray does for me isn't taken for granted. Thank you for always being by my side." The Crown Prince was also very happy to hear this. After this incident, the relationship between the two grew even closer. However, after the two bid farewell, a white-haired young man sensed the presence of an evil dragon nearby. Upon returning home, just as Sierra alighted from the carriage, May came trotting over to greet her. But she noticed the young lady's face was filled with worry and fatigue. She anxiously asked what had happened at the ball. Sierra forced a smile and explained that nothing had happened. She then asked May to prepare her bath water. Only after May left did Sierra's face reveal her worry and concern. In fact, after parting with Tiliel, she had been putting on a brave face the whole time. She couldn't understand why Tiliel had become like that. In the book, she was supposed to be the beloved female lead, but because of her own appearance, Tiliel had turned into a dark, obsessive girl. Sitting at her dressing table, Sierra was consumed by deep self-reproach. But then she thought perhaps it wasn't her fault. After all, it wasn't just the female lead, but even the male lead. The book said he was someone affected by a curse, prone to going berserk. Yet when the red full moon rose, he turned into a little black dragon. But what the girl found most incomprehensible was that the crown prince would agree to such an outrageous two-timing arrangement. Why did he hide his identity from everyone else, yet chose to reveal himself to her? Sierra held her forehead, convinced that the male and female leads must be hiding something. Unable to figure it out, she went to the study to work and pass the time. At this moment, May came to find Sierra with a troubled expression. Seeing her constantly watching her face, Sierra told May to speak freely. May nervously handed over a letter, saying the Marquis demanded she return home immediately. If he found that the young lady hadn't re-engaged, he wouldn't spare the servants who attended to her. Hearing this, Sierra's face was filled with disbelief. She scoffed. She couldn't believe her father would stoop so low, using the safety of the servants to threaten her. Looking at the trembling May before her, Sierra told her not to worry. She would use all her power to protect them. The noble daughter of the Marquis' household ended up opening a skewer stand on the street. When the crown prince found out, he immediately transformed into the little black dragon to show his support. But when the skewer was presented to him, he absolutely refused to eat it. He insisted that the girl take a bite first. Only then did he start enjoying it with relish. It turned out that not long ago, Sierra's scumbag father had threatened the safety of the mansion's servants to force her into engagement. So Sierra came to the guild to discuss countermeasures with Reed. In fact, the wealth accumulated by Sierra's guild was enough to buy Tenachet families. And her original intention in establishing the guild was to break off the engagement with her fiancé. But oddly enough, her scumbag father seemed to have reached an agreement with the Hachette family. When Reed saw the letter Sierra's scumbag father had sent her, he couldn't believe it either. It was the 22nd century, yet there was still such behavior of selling one's daughter. Sierra was also very angry about her scumbag father's threats. She really wanted to throw the guild's money directly in his face. But as a founding family, establishing such an underground guild could lead to serious consequences. So Sierra decided to expand the guild's business. Reed immediately perked up upon hearing this. Hadn't the young lady been very much against expanding their operations before? But Sierra replied that she wanted a legitimate business. This left Reed puzzled. The scope of this business transformation was too broad. Without giving Reed time to guess, Sierra quickly gathered the guild staff. Everyone looked troubled when they received the business plan, because what was drawn on it was too abstract, looking like some new type of torture device. Unexpectedly, the next moment Sierra pointed to a nearby skewer stand, saying this would be their main product for sale in the future. Reed held up the drawing in disbelief, asking, "So what you've drawn here is actually chicken skewers?" Sierra nodded. This was currently the most suitable legitimate business for her to start from scratch. The guild's members couldn't sit still. They were used to doing big things, but now they had to open a skewer stand. They were very dissatisfied. Only one person raised his hand in agreement. As a pure love warrior, he had long been unable to tolerate those disgusting scenes. So, according to the principle of the minority following the majority, the matter was settled. At this point, one member raised a question. What would they use to attract customers with these skewers? Sierra was prepared. What she was selling wasn't ordinary chicken skewers. She told everyone to try them before making a judgment. When the members tasted the chicken skewers, they were either in tears from the spiciness or breathing fire. It took them drinking 200 gin of water to finally recover. Sierra smiled and explained. This was currently the Empire's one and only spicy chicken skewer. Reed, coughing as he spoke, commented, "Setting fire to people's mouths is indeed a novel form of torture." Hearing Reed's sarcasm, Sierra wasn't upset at all. Instead, she thought of the little black dragon that could breathe fire. So Sierra decided to name the skewers. after dragon body parts. Soon, everyone completed the preparations for opening the skewer stand. The menu items were all named after dragon parts. And while everyone was busy preparing to sell skewers, the workload of 100 guild members was dumped on Reed's head. He was on the verge of tears. Seeing the skewer stand officially open, Sierra was delighted that things had gone so smoothly. Suddenly, she heard a gurgling sound. After looking around, she discovered a baby black dragon flying straight towards her. Sierra quickly caught it with her hands. After the dragon baby landed safely, it nuzzled against her chest. Looking at the black dragon baby in her arms, Sierra thought that this form was actually less conspicuous. After everything that had happened with Duval and Tiliel, neither Duke Epshulity nor the crown prince himself was suitable to appear by her side, although she actually wanted to stir up rumors with the crown prince. At this moment, the dragon baby pointed at the nearby stand, chirping nonstop. Sierra explained that this was the first step of her grand plan. The dragon baby, curious, leaned in for a closer look. But when it saw the menu listed Dragon Horn, Dragon Heart, and Dragon Tail, it was startled. It cried and buried itself in Sierra's arms for comfort. Sierra could only stroke the trembling dragon baby in her arms. Just then, the extras began to shout enthusiastically, "Freshly grilled dragon skewers. Come and try them." At this, the dragon baby broke free from Sierra's arms. It hugged its own little tail pitifully, then wrote "No, no" on Sierra's hand. Helpless, Sierra decided to let facts speak for themselves. She went to the stand and got a skewer. The dragon baby shook its head, refusing to eat. Sierra took a bite and told it that it was just ordinary chicken. She then offered it again. Looking at the bite mark Sierra had left on the skewer, the dragon baby took a big bite. Instantly, its eyes sparkled with delight. Anything Sierra had eaten must be delicious. This scene of the little dragon munching on the skewer was spotted by a passing mother and child. The boy with a watermelon-shaped head tugged at his mother. "Mom, I want what that flying lizard is eating too." Sierra couldn't help but feel exasperated. Why did the crown prince always have to disguise himself as a lizard? Then the mother and child approached the skewer stand. The watermelon-headed boy took a big bite. As a result, tears immediately welled up in his eyes from the spiciness. His mother, seeing this, became very concerned. She grabbed her son's skewer and put it in her own mouth. The scene of mother and son fighting over the skewer attracted the attention of passers-by. In no time, a large crowd gathered around the skewer stand. A burly man with an imposing physique, seeing a group of people defeated by the spiciness, became interested. He boldly tossed 5 coins, wanting to challenge the spiciest skewer. So the mischievous extra slathered it with spicy sauce and suggested he first make an emergency appointment at the proctology department. Seeing the bustling crowd around the skewer stand, Sierra smiled with satisfaction. She excitedly told the baby dragon that this was the first step in establishing her Lomino's merchant group. He was the empire's most noble crown prince, and also the most love-struck wife-doting maniac. Not only did he impressively drive away the scumbag fiancé, but he also transformed into a baby black dragon to cheer up the girl. But when Sierra asked why he was so good to her, the crown prince couldn't express his true feelings to the girl. Not long ago, Sierra had opened a skewer stand. The crown prince rushed over immediately to show his support. To attract customers, the crown prince deliberately sat in front of the children, happily hugging a chicken skewer and starting to enjoy it. However, a curious child asked Sierra a question. "Is this lizard your own pet, sister?" At this moment, Sierra looked awkwardly at the baby black dragon in front of her. She then shamelessly admitted it was. The child became envious and asked, "What's its name?" The dragon baby in her arms, hearing this, also couldn't help but anticipate what name Sierra would give. Little did they know, Sierra was terrible at naming. Just because it could only make goo-goo sounds, she directly named it Goo-Goo. This made the dragon baby tear up. Was this really going to be its name as an evil dragon? After the child went to eat chicken skewers, Sierra picked up the dragon baby and thanked Goo-Goo, saying it was thanks to him that her store was so busy. The skewer stand kept operating until they ran out of oil and closed for the day. An extra handed Sierra today's sales report, but he couldn't understand why they deliberately set aside a portion of the earnings to donate to the temple. He knew that even if the skewer stand was this busy every day, this donation would still be a significant expense. But Sierra just smiled and told him to do as instructed. and to make sure to inform the customers about this. In fact, she never expected this small skewer stand to make much money. She just wanted to use this opportunity to let more people know about Luminos, this new merchant group. But some dim-witted people took it seriously. Listening to his subordinate's report, Duval felt a hint of contempt for Sierra in his heart. He arrogantly assumed that Sierra, having lost the support of the Ashe family, had invested in a skewer stand out of desperation. And this ridiculous behavior was just Sierra's way of putting on a brave face, unwilling to admit her predicament. Thinking about this, he immediately relaxed, fantasizing that once Sierra came to her senses, she would return to his side. Then he inquired about news of Marquis Revelins, but he learned that the Marquis was stranded due to a carriage breakdown on the way. So he could only order his subordinates to assist the Marquis and keep a constant watch on the situation of the Luminos merchant group. For the next few days, Sierra continued to work alongside the extras. By midnight, the Crown Prince couldn't help but worry about Sierra's health. He believed Sierra was afraid of the Ashe family interfering with the merchant group's business. He assured Sierra not to worry, saying that if Duval came to cause trouble, he would certainly not let him off. But Sierra explained that this was only part of it. She was more worried about the situation with her father. The Crown Prince, however, said that it would take some time for the Marquis to return to the capital. This made Sierra feel a bit strange. She had only just learned about her father's carriage problem. Could it be that Reed had kidnapped her family's carrier pigeons? The Crown Prince's face instantly turned red with embarrassment, not knowing how to explain. But under Sierra's persistent questioning, the Crown Prince could only sheepishly admit that he had deliberately sabotaged one of the carriage wheels. "But I did this only because I wanted to be of help to you, my lady. I know you can handle this matter on your own, but I still couldn't sit by and do nothing." The Crown Prince's heartfelt words struck Sierra's heart directly. Taking advantage of the intimate atmosphere between them, Sierra asked the question that had been on her mind for a long time. "Reed, why are you so good to me?" The Crown Prince was clearly also deeply moved by Sierra's inquiry. But in the end, he still couldn't bring himself to say it out loud. He only said it was because they had formed a contract, and helping her break off the engagement was part of that contract. Sierra was somewhat disappointed with this answer. From the Crown Prince's evasive gaze and uneasy movements, she could tell Reed was lying. "I know Reed, and I have a mutually beneficial relationship. You help me break off my engagement, and I help you get your fiancée back. But Reed, you never actually intended to win Tiliel's heart back, did you? You've met her several times, but you've never once looked at her properly. And even without Tiliel's evolution ability, you wouldn't be affected by the curse." Having said this, Sierra once again asked the Crown Prince what his real reason was for agreeing to their mutual infidelity. The Crown Prince didn't answer because he didn't know how to explain it either. He then gently took Sierra's hand. "My dream, I will reveal everything to you soon. Please give me a little more time." Seeing that Sierra didn't speak, the Crown Prince gently comforted her. "You're not angry with me, are you, Lady Sierra?" Though the Crown Prince's words were still full of affection, Sierra gave up on pursuing the question further. She suddenly feared hearing the answer from him. Perhaps it wasn't yet time for him to explain the situation. So she apologized to the Crown Prince, saying she wasn't angry and that she was the one who had asked too many questions. "You don't need to answer my question right now. It was just a bit of curiosity on my part." Although Sierra didn't mean to blame him, the Crown Prince still sensed disappointment from her action of letting go of his hand. Watching Sierra's figure gradually disappear into the distance, the Crown Prince's heart was filled with melancholy. After transmigrating into the book, she had become best friends with the female lead. But the female lead ended up seducing her fiancé. She even had the audacity to suggest that they could continue being best friends. In a fit of anger, the girl wrote a letter to the male lead. "Crown Prince, since your intended bride and my fiancé are together now, why don't we just get together as well?" And so, Sierra and the Crown Prince made a contract. She would help the Crown Prince win back the female lead's heart, while the Crown Prince would help her break off the engagement with the scumbag. But what Sierra didn't expect was that the Crown Prince seemed to have targeted her from the beginning. That day, she finally asked the Crown Prince the question that had been bothering her. Why was he being so kind to her? Upon hearing this, The crown prince's gaze became evasive. He explained that he only wanted to help the lady break off her engagement. But if that were true, there was no need for him to be so attentive to her. The crown prince's blushing face and restless hands said it all. So Sierra asked about the reason why the crown prince had agreed to form the contract in the first place. But the crown prince didn't tell her immediately. He promised to reveal everything to her in the future. For some reason, Sierra suddenly became afraid of hearing the truth. She hastily bid farewell to the crown prince. That night, Sierra once again encountered that golden dragon in her dream, still with its perverted attributes maxed out. It kept trying to snuggle up to her, causing Sierra to have a restless night. The next day, she arrived at the Underground Guild early to handle official business. Reed brought Sierra some good news and some bad news. The good news was that the Lominos merchant group she had founded had already become the talk of the social circles. This new type of merchant group had caught the attention of the nobles. But when it came to the bad news, Reed became hesitant. It turned out that her former fiancé, Duval, wanted to interfere with the merchant group's transactions. He was offering double the support funds that Sierra had provided, trying to force the Lominos merchant group to sever ties with the Revellans family. Sierra found it amusing that scumbag Duval had no idea that she was the founder of the Lominos merchant group. Suddenly, a staff member interrupted them. An important guest had arrived unexpectedly, wanting to have a love consultation like last time. After a while, Sierra was fully dressed and ready to meet the client. Originally, she wanted to ask Reed to handle it for her, but she was also very curious about this client. Although they had just met last time, she couldn't remember the content of their conversation at all. There was no record of it, even in her work diary. At this moment, the man's voice interrupted her thoughts. During this time, he had bought the Empire's best-selling love guide to study, but it seemed he couldn't find a solution to his problem. Sierra couldn't imagine that someone would actually learn about dating for books. It was obvious that such a person didn't have many friends usually. No wonder he was willing to pay a hefty sum to consult her. Then she asked him what problem he had encountered. The man told Sierra that recently he had become quite close to that young lady, and he had even started using pet names for her. Sierra was a bit confused. Doesn't this mean that things were progressing very smoothly between them? The next moment, the man's smile faded, because he had hidden a secret from that young lady. If she knew the truth, their relationship might be ruined. Seeing the man's serious expression, Sierra guessed that he must have concealed something quite significant. But regardless of what the secret was, telling the truth to the other person was the best solution, because lies would eventually be exposed. Continuing to hide it would do no good for their relationship. Sierra even suggested that he should take advantage of this momentum and directly confess his feelings. Even if rejected, the other person would keep thinking about it and eventually fall for him unknowingly. The man found it very reasonable. So he adopted Sierra's suggestion and asked if there were any suitable occasions for confessing. Sierra was about to say that she shouldn't interfere with their date arrangements. But after seeing the money pouch the man casually tossed out, Sierra immediately enthusiastically stated that arranging romantic itineraries was her specialty. Soon, the notepad was filled with names of shops and places. The man could barely keep up with all the information. Finally, Sierra wished him success in capturing the young lady's heart. Little did she know that these suggestions would come back like a boomerang and hit her in the future. On her way home that evening, Sierra felt a bit ridiculous. She hadn't even solved her own relationship problems, yet she was giving love advice to others. Thinking about the Crown Prince's hesitant expression from last night, Sierra didn't know what to do. How to face the Crown Prince in the future had become a difficult problem, but suddenly she had an idea. Since her goal was to break off the engagement with Duval, if she started dating the Crown Prince, he would back off on his own. But a sudden voice made her freeze in place. People who use others' feelings are complete trash. Sierra thought it was referring to her and panicked. But when she turned her head, she saw a maid comforting a maid. It turned out the maid had been deceived by someone she trusted most. The person knew the maid liked him and wouldn't refuse his requests, so he deliberately took advantage of her. May expressed her indignation, saying that such people were absolute scum. Although she was talking about someone else, Sierra felt as if she was being scolded herself. She awkwardly agreed with May's words. After the two of them left, Sierra also realized that her own thoughts were quite inappropriate. She was still feeling guilty about it, even when she went to bed. So she made up her mind to rely on herself, break off the engagement, and no longer depend on the Crown Prince. But suddenly, the image of the crown prince appeared in her mind. He was questioning her with tears streaming down his face. "I was so sincere to you. How could you do this to me?" In an instant, Sierra's face turned red. She kept warning herself not to let her imagination run wild. The girl he liked was chatting happily with the white-haired Shota. The little black dragon became insanely jealous. Little did he know that the white-haired boy was actually the second male lead in the novel, and was destined to be the enemy of the evil dragon in the original story. Sierra was only doing this to help cover for him. Not long ago, Sierra had understood the Crown Prince's feelings from his expression. Since then, no matter what she did, the image of the Crown Prince looking hurt and sad would unconsciously appear in her mind. That night, she received a letter from the Crown Prince, saying he had something important to tell her. Sierra knew what he wanted to say, but she wasn't mentally prepared for it yet. Although she couldn't say she liked the Crown Prince at the moment, she still wanted to maintain their current relationship. For her selfish self, Sierra temporarily postponed meeting with the Crown Prince. This way, perhaps the Crown Prince's feelings for her would fade. That day, Sierra accompanied her subordinates to run the skewer stand as usual. When it was time to close up, she still seemed distracted. It wasn't until her subordinate came to remind her that she snapped out of it. To prevent her fiancé from causing trouble, Sierra instructed them to patrol the surroundings. However, if nothing unexpected happened, the unexpected did occur. That very night, two foolish individuals set their sights on the skewer stand. They had received a commission to prevent the Lomino's merchant group from expanding further, so they poured gasoline over the skewer stand. Finally, they set on fire with a match. By the next day, the skewer stand had been reduced to ruins. After investigation, it was clear that this was premeditated. Sierra could guess who was behind it without even thinking. That scumbag indeed couldn't stand to see her doing well. But she wasn't upset at all. Originally, she had already planned to stop the skewer business. This incident actually gave her an opportunity to start new business. Since the Lomino's merchant group had already made a name for itself, she might as well go for something big. Afterwards, she invited many nobles to collaborate. Because the merchant group had been donating funds to the temple in the past, many nobles were very optimistic about the group's development. After seeing off one group of guests after another, Sierra's head was starting to ache. She wanted to go outside for some fresh air. But as soon as she stepped out of the room, she heard the servants arguing with someone. Seeing the visitor, she was startled. This seemingly underage child was actually the head of the Justice Duke's family, one of the founding heroes of the country. He was also the male lead in the original story. He came straight to Sierra, completely disregarding the confusion on her face. "You should know me, right? I am Rubli. I'm here just to have a chat with you, Serial." Although this simpleton had mispronounced her name, Sierra didn't dare to show any displeasure. Because in the original story, Rubli was an extremely unhinged character. He possessed the ability to kill his opponent by sacrificing himself. If the Revellin's family existed to imprison the evil dragon, then the Justice family existed to kill it. In terms of strength, no one in the entire novel could match the evil dragon. Rubli's only shortcoming was that he had to live his entire life in the form of a child. However, in the original story, to protect the female lead, he awakened into his male form. This was also why Sierra was willing to humor him. After all, it was her who changed the original plot, causing him to remain in this childlike state. Sierra asked Rubli if he also intended to do business with her, but he coldly rejected the idea. The purpose of his visit was to find out the identity of the man by her side at the last palace ball. Sierra was shocked. She hadn't expected Rubli to remember. After all, the Crown Prince had used magic to confuse everyone's memories. Logically, no one should have remembered. Duke Ipshulity then explained to Rubli that he had sensed an evil aura from that man at the time. Moreover, when he later inquired with other nobles who attended the ball, none of them remembered such a person. This matter was indeed quite suspicious. Although Sierra didn't know why Rubli still remembered, she knew that she absolutely couldn't let the Crown Prince and Rubli meet. So she directly played dumb, saying she knew nothing and couldn't remember who her escort was at the time. Hearing this, Rubli let out a light snort. "Seeing your idiotic expression, it doesn't seem like you're lying. It appears you've also been manipulated by that person somehow." Seeing how easily Rubli was fooled, Sierra decided to amp up her performance. Later, when Rubli couldn't get any more information, he prepared to leave. He then gave Sierra a gift. Inside was a necklace of precious gems that was clearly very valuable. Sierra didn't want to accept such a precious gift for no reason. But Rubli insisted it was compensation for barging into her home uninvited. He even said that if Sierra wouldn't accept it, he'd refuse to leave. Sierra realized he didn't seem to be joking, so she had no choice but to reluctantly accept the gift. Before leaving, Rubli asked Sierra to notify him immediately if she had any news. Sierra smiled and agreed outwardly, but inwardly she thought, "Don't even dream about it." This scene was coincidentally witnessed by the crown prince, who had transformed into a baby black dragon outside the window. The more happily Sierra smiled at other men, the more it pained his heart, and just after Rubli left, that string of gemstone necklace burst into dazzling light. He had thought that avoiding each other would lessen their feelings, but he had ultimately underestimated the power of a love-struck mind. In the afternoon, the crown prince, transformed into a baby black dragon, came to visit Sierra. Unexpectedly, he saw her chatting happily with a white-haired person. The little black dragon immediately became jealous. He left dejectedly. In the evening, Sierra asked Reed to report on the guild situation. This fellow, however, complained tearfully, saying that without the leader, the guild was in complete disarray. Sierra, of course, didn't believe him. She threatened that if he didn't work properly, she wouldn't pay him. Only then did Reed obediently start reporting on the work. Currently, the aid work Sierra was carrying out was mainly controlled by the Ashe family, so Reed was worried that Sierra couldn't handle it. Sierra reassured him. She had started the same kind of work with Duval and then completely crushed his confidence. After saying this, she asked Reed to secretly investigate those nobles in his files. After finishing the call with Reed, Sierra was just about to go back and rest. Unexpectedly, a magical letter suddenly appeared in the air. Sierra was surprised, wondering who would write to her in the middle of the night. Seeing the royal crest on the envelope, she immediately understood. She casually opened the envelope. Is Sierra asleep? She almost laughed out loud at this opening line, but she quickly realized it wasn't the time to laugh, as she hadn't yet decided how to respond. But not replying to the crown prince's letter was impossible, so she properly wrote back saying she wasn't asleep. The crown prince replied instantly, "Have you been very busy lately? We haven't even had time to meet." Sierra indicated that she was indeed very busy and really couldn't find the time. "I wanted to go to so many places with you. It's really a pity." Sierra clearly hadn't expected the crown prince to be so straightforward. At this point, she couldn't even pretend not to know his feelings. And while Sierra was troubled, the crown prince was still sending messages wanting to meet Sierra. "I'm really sad. Apart from you, I have no one else I can meet." Seeing these messages, Sierra felt a pang of sympathy. The crown prince in the original story was also like this. Because of the curse, he could only stay in the palace. Even if he went out, he had to disguise himself as someone else. No wonder he had been so happy during that time, experiencing mundane daily life with Ray. Seeing the crown prince saying in the letter that he was very lonely, Sierra unconsciously imagined his pitiful, choked-up expression. In fact, he also very much wanted to accept Reed's feelings. But the human heart is the easiest thing to change. This was something he had experienced deeply in both his past and present lives. So he ultimately steeled his heart and rejected the other party. And just after Sierra sent the reply and went back to her room to sleep, on her desk, another reply from the crown prince arrived. "Good night, Sierra." The next morning, Sierra was receiving the nobles who had appointments as usual. Unexpectedly, just as she asked her subordinate to contact the other party, there was a knock on the door. The moment the door opened, a fragrance wafted into the room. "Miss, Count K-Don has arrived." His eyes seemed a bit dazed. Sierra immediately thought of something upon seeing this. She stood up for her seat. The newcomer had a head of thick black hair, clearly the crown prince in disguise. He walked straight towards Sierra. Sierra anxiously asked the crown prince why he had come so suddenly. Seeing her like this, the crown prince felt like teasing her. "I, Count K-Don, have come to discuss business with the young lady, of course." But with the girl he had been thinking about right in front of him, the crown prince couldn't help but express his longing. "Sierra, please don't avoid me today. I'm begging you." Ever since learning of the crown prince's feelings for her, she had been trying every way to avoid meeting him. But today, she had finally been caught red-handed. It It turned out that these days, the girl had been inviting nobles for business cooperation at her home. Upon learning this, the crown prince simply disguised himself as a noble and came directly to Sierra's home for a visit. Originally, Sierra had thought about playing along with his act, but who knew the crown prince would keep stimulating her sympathy with that handsome face of his. Sierra, without you, I'm really lonely. Besides you, I can't find anyone else to spend time with. Seeing him say this much, Sierra really couldn't find any more reasons to refuse. But all the way, Sierra appeared very uneasy. She didn't know how to face the crown prince. Soon, the two arrived at a dessert shop. Sierra hadn't expected Reed to like sweet things. Faced with Sierra's question, the crown prince stammered, not knowing how to explain. Then, with a determined face, I heard the green grape egg tarts here are delicious. You must try them. No, we must try them together. Sierra found it a bit amusing seeing him so serious. When the exquisite desserts were served, the delicious sweets helped Sierra unconsciously regain her composure. But the crown prince just stood by with his hands clasped, watching. Occasionally, he would take out a small note to review key points. Sierra was bewildered by his strange behavior, but she didn't pay much attention to it. She even felt a bit embarrassed because she had eaten all the egg tarts herself, without leaving any for the crown prince. Then they went to the street to eat crepes. They also visited a famous steak restaurant. Although everything was delicious, Sierra felt something was a bit strange. Finally, she remembered. These places were exactly the same as the date plan she had made for someone else. Realizing that she was now on a date with the crown prince, she became flustered again. The crown prince noticed her unease and asked if she was unsatisfied with anything or if she was too tired. Sierra quickly explained that everything was fine, but her heart was already in turmoil. At this moment, the crown prince suggested they go watch the sunset together. Sierra initially wanted to refuse, saying it was getting too late. But the crown prince used his old trick again, playing the pity card by saying he never had the chance to play outside when he was young, so he hoped Sierra could accompany him a bit longer. In the end, impulse defeated reason, and Sierra agreed to watch the sunset. However, she insisted on returning home after a brief viewing. So, the crafty crown prince led her to the edge of the church. Although it was indeed an excellent spot to watch the sunset, he clearly had other intentions. Sierra obediently watched the sunset while his gaze remained fixed on Sierra. Noticing the crown prince's stare, Sierra asked, puzzled why he was looking at her. Was the sunset not beautiful? No, it's because it's too beautiful, he replied. At this point, Sierra couldn't misunderstand the crown prince's meaning. She awkwardly tried to change the subject. I think the sunset is beautiful too. Seeing the crown prince about to continue speaking, Sierra quickly interrupted him. Thank you, Reed. I've been busy discussing business with nobles lately, so it feels good to come out and breathe some fresh air. And so, they both fell silent, with only the sound of the wind audible. A leaf, as if by chance, fell onto Sierra's head. The crown prince, of course, wouldn't miss this opportunity for physical contact. He gently plucked the leaf from her head. Sierra clearly hadn't expected this sudden gesture. She turned her head, blushing, to thank him. The air was suddenly filled with an ambiguous atmosphere. Sierra's reason was nearly overwhelmed. Seeing the crown prince's expectant and persistent gaze, she chose not to avoid it anymore. However, at that very moment, it suddenly started pouring rain. The downpour extinguished the fire in their hearts. Two once inseparable best friends had now become mortal enemies. Sierra, who had transmigrated into this world, in order to change her tragic fate, had rescued the female lead from suffering in the slums early on. In the eyes of the female lead, Tyrael, Sierra had become the only light in her life. To get closer to Sierra, whom she admired, she morbidly imitated everything about Sierra. Not just in terms of dress and behavior, but even wanting the same fiancé. However, in Sierra's eyes, how could this be anything but betrayal? After Sierra severed ties with Tyrael, Tyrael turned to the dark side. Her feelings for Sierra transformed into intense hatred. Not long ago, Sierra was tricked into a date by the crown prince. The crown prince had finally found an opportunity to express his feelings, but was thwarted by the sudden downpour. So he quickly found a place for them to take shelter. At this moment, they were both still immersed in the ambiguous atmosphere from earlier, unable to extricate themselves. Sierra accidentally met the crown prince's gaze and quickly turned her head away. blushing. To ease the awkwardness, she tried to make conversation by complaining about how sudden the rain was. However, the attentive crown prince knew that Sierra was prone to catching cold when wet, so he took off his coat and draped it over Sierra's shoulders. The crown prince urged Sierra to stay warm, lest she catch a cold. Sierra had just said she was fine when the crown prince blurted out, "You may be fine, but I'm not." Seeing the crown prince's love-filled gaze, Sierra's heart began to race involuntarily. She felt somewhat shaken by these successive, intimate moments. Every time she tried to escape, she would end up being pursued even more intensely by him. Sierra knew this couldn't go on. She wanted Reed to hear her thoughts. "Actually, I wanted to keep hiding. I thought if I pretended not to know, this would all blow over. Although I know it's not right, I usually just pretend to be strong. But when I have to face things alone, I tend to fumble. The truth is, I'm scared. I'm afraid that once I hear those words from you, Reed, our relationship will change dramatically. So, Reed, can you give me a little more time? Then you can say whatever you want." The crown prince didn't show much expression after hearing this. On the contrary, he felt happy. He hadn't expected Sierra to be willing to agonize over these issues for his sake. Then he told Sierra that he would wait for her, no matter how long it took. But he wouldn't just wait silently. He would work hard to help Sierra better determine her feelings. Sierra accepted this proposal, and just as Sierra and the crown prince were getting cozy, elsewhere in the palace, the queen summoned Tyrael. She had long heard of Tyrael's plight and felt sorry for her. She even told Tyrael to prepare herself to take back everything from Sierra's hands. Hearing this, Tyrael's face was full of bewilderment, but the queen insisted that everything Sierra possessed should have belonged to Tyrael. After all, Sierra had originally wanted to break off her engagement with Duval. But after learning that Tyrael liked Duval, Sierra's attitude had done a complete 180-degree turn, and she had deliberately distanced herself from Tyrael. On the surface, Sierra pretended to be kind and helped Tyrael, but in the end, she had humiliated Tyrael in front of everyone. The more Tyrael listened, the more it made sense to her. All her former admiration and envy for Sierra instantly turned into anger and hatred. Then the queen promised Tyrael that she would help her and make her the most reputable and powerful crown princess in the empire. However, after Tyrael left, the queen sneered at her stupidity. This fool was nothing but a tool for her to trample the crown prince underfoot. As for the position of crown princess, that was the closest position to the cursed crown prince. She had just finished an ambiguous date with a love-struck crown prince. Little did she know that the very next day, he couldn't resist and transformed into the adorable little black dragon to win over his beloved. That day, Sierra took a carriage to Baron Valentine's house. The bright sunshine formed a stark contrast to last night's heavy rain, involuntarily reminding her of the ambiguous atmosphere then. Now that Sierra was clear-headed, she deeply regretted saying such embarrassing things. She didn't know how to face the crown prince next time. To make matters worse, she had promised not to hide anymore. At this moment, the carriage arrived at its destination. The Baroness personally welcomed Sierra at the entrance. After her divorce, she was living so much more comfortably than before, as if she had become 10 years younger. The two went to the garden to discuss business. This time, the Baroness had allocated a considerable amount of funds to support Sierra's merchant group. This money wasn't just a repayment for Sierra's past help, but also represented the Baroness's confidence in Sierra's project. However, the Baroness felt this wasn't enough, so she suggested that Sierra should aim for the Summer Star. It was an honor bestowed upon nobles by the Queen every year, symbolizing the ability to accumulate a vast network of connections. The Baroness believed that although the competition for the Summer Star was fierce, the exceptional Sierra would surely stand out among the nobles. Later, a man arrived at Sierra's doorstep. Upon seeing the magnificent mansion of the Marquis, the man instantly became nervous. Thinking he must have been tricked, he was about to turn and leave, when a voice called out to him. Sierra, with a radiant smile, invited the man in to talk. It turned out the man's name was Abe, and he was someone who spent his days researching useless inventions. This time, Sierra had specifically written to invite him for collaboration, because Sierra clearly remembered that this shy man, who was awkward in social interactions, would later become a great magician recorded in history. At this moment, Abe, who had arrived in the reception room, was trembling with nervousness. He never imagined that the young lady from founding family would approach him. After all, his past inventions had only been met with ridicule, and he was often chased away as a fraud. Yet today, a noble had taken the initiative to meet him. He found it quite unbelievable. He even suspected it might be some new kind of trap. Sierra assured him not to worry. She was simply interested in Ape's invention called Skoru and intended to continue funding its development. Ape's eyes lit up instantly upon hearing this. He suddenly stood up. In that case, let me explain it properly. Skoru is a brand new product that can concentrate magic power onto paper. If successfully developed, in the future, one could simply tear a piece of paper to restore magic power at any time. But everyone thought he was talking nonsense. Without funding, he didn't even have a single sample yet. Do you need Rabin? You know, those black stones from the gem mines. Ape was surprised that Sierra knew about this. Logically, this type of gem would be considered the worst of the worst, usually destroyed outright. Then, Sierra stated that she could supply Rabin in unlimited quantities, but required Ape to successfully develop it within a month. When returning to her room, Sierra initially wanted to contact Rabin immediately, because Ape had one problem besides Rabin and funding. That was the magic formula in Skoru. It used an ancient language that had been lost for 1,000 years. So she thought about asking Reed to help investigate. Unexpectedly, she saw a little black dragon stuck to the window. Sierra quickly opened the window to let him in. Without the glass barrier, the little black dragon dove straight into Sierra's arms. Seeing the scarf around his neck, she asked and learned that he had tied it himself. Sierra strongly suspected that the crown prince was deliberately trying to seduce her. So she asked the crown prince if he thought he was cute. The little black dragon pretended not to understand, but Sierra felt he definitely knew. At this moment, the crown prince picked up a pen and asked her who that man from earlier was. Sierra hadn't expected him to be jealous about this too. She explained that Ape was a magician who was helping her develop Skoru. As she spoke, she took out the magic formula to show the crown prince. However, the little black dragon only looked at it for a few seconds, then started scribbling on the paper. He then handed it to Sierra. Sierra was immediately shocked. She never imagined that this so-called 1,000-year-old lost ancient language would be so easily deciphered by this seemingly harmless little black dragon. The ancient language lost for 1,000 years was easily cracked by a baby black dragon. When Sierra received the deciphered magic formula, her face was full of shock. Could the crown prince understand the ancient language? But logically, there shouldn't be any humans left in this world who could decipher the ancient language. Or was it because he was in dragon form that he could understand it? Seeing the little one's proud expression, Sierra stroked his chin as a reward. Looking more closely at the deciphered formula, it was incredibly simple. The little black dragon called out twice, reminding Sierra to focus on the task at hand. Sierra quickly called for May, instructing him to help send a letter to Ape, saying that the magic formula had been completely deciphered. Afterwards, Sierra arrived at a complex residential area. This was Ape's home. It was Sierra's first time visiting such a place. She knocked on the door. As the wooden door opened, it made a grating sound. Ape appeared with heavy dark circles under his eyes, clearly having worked tirelessly for several days. He then invited Sierra inside. The interior was in complete disarray. There was barely any space to step. Ape immediately returned to his seat to continue his research. Suddenly, he remembered the letter saying the formula had been deciphered. This was precisely why Sierra had come in person. Upon receiving the magic formula, Ape's face lit up with excitement. His expression said it all. The formula was correct. However, he was curious about how Sierra had managed to decipher it. Sierra explained it wasn't her, but her pet lizard who had helped interpret it. Ape clearly didn't believe it. How could a lizard possibly understand the ancient language? As Sierra was pondering how to explain, Ape turned his attention back to his research. Following the new magic formula, he reconfigured the magic potion. Then he added it to the solution along with the Rabin gemstone. The solution quickly reacted with them. The solution violently reacted and exploded. Ape sat on the ground, covered in soot and dust. Sierra hurriedly approached to inquire about his condition, but Ape just stared at something in his hand without answering. Finally, he realized the experiment had succeeded. Without this formula interpretation, he might have been forever labeled a fraud. But now, with Sierra's help, he had successfully created it. He instinctively wanted to give Sierra a hug. However, as his hand was about to touch Sierra's waist, the little black dragon suddenly pounced on Ape's face to stop him, and even swatted him with its tail. Ape, realizing his impropriety, apologized. Sierra quickly hugged the little dragon, asking Ape if he was hurt, explaining that her aunt's pet was easily jealous. But Ape didn't hear a word, too busy cradling and caressing the Skoru. Now that Skoru had been successfully created, all that remained was to promote it. Ape only knew invention. He wasn't skilled in these matters. So, Sierra took on the task of promoting Skoru. At the same time, she warned Ape to keep it well hidden before she took action. Back home, Sierra considered several nobles for promotion, but couldn't find anyone satisfactory. At this moment, May entered carrying a large pile of gifts. He informed Sierra that they were all from someone called Ashleity. Sierra remembered this was another identity of the crown prince. The little black dragon quickly feigned innocence. Sierra asked May to put the items on the table. Under the little black dragon's urging, the gifts in front of Sierra all unwrapped themselves. Sierra picked one up and looked. She was instantly dumbfounded. Inside were all treasures like brown sugar water.